Welcome to listening to stories on Kevin TV audiobook channel. Chapter 2207, The Crimson Empress Appearance, 2. You have no idea how long I have waited for this moment, Master Tian? Xiaomeilin laughed chaotically as she swung her sword mercilessly despite the difference in their cultivation. You're really enjoying yourself, aren't you? Yuan remarked with a stiff smile on his face. For some reason, he didn't feel the need to tell her to stop attacking him, almost as if he knew that it would be pointless and that the only way for her to stop was to satisfy her. Meanwhile, Leader Yang and the others were left speechless by the unexpected situation. Why are they fighting? I thought they were friends. You idiot, look at the Crimson Empress face. I have never seen her smile before, yet she's smiling from ear to ear right now. Yi, you're right. Good Lord, who is that man? The men there couldn't help but feel smitten by Xiaomeilin at this moment, even though they were terrified of her just moments ago, and it was caused by a single smile. As for Yuan, he was barely just strong enough to fight Xiaomeilin without being completely overpowered. Xiaomeilin was at the 9th level of God Ascension, essentially the peak of the cultivation world. Moreover, unlike the other cultivators, she possessed an abundance of spiritual energy in her dantian, allowing her to fight without restraint. Of course, she wasn't using celestial qi, or Yuan wouldn't stand a chance even with eternal essence. A minute, 10 minutes, an hour passed in the blink of an eye. As Yuan continued fighting Xiaomeilin, his memories of the Asura clan started to resurface, such as their first encounter, how they started as enemies but ended as allies, and his relationship with Xiaomeilin and the other members. Noticing a profound flicker in Yuan's eyes, Xiaomeilin remarked, "You dare think about other things while clashing swords with me. That arrogance, you haven't changed one bit since we last met during the primordial era?" Yuan smiled and said, "I can say the same to you. Don't tell me you've spent your time in this place cultivating. Isn't that obvious? There's nothing else to do in this shithole besides cultivating you. We're only at the 2nd level of God Ascension the last time I saw you. To reach the 9th level while stuck in this place, very impressive." Xiaomeilin chuckled as she swung her sword. You, on the other hand, have gotten a lot weaker. Are you disappointed? After several exchanges in silence, Xiaomeilin responded with a sadistic grin on her beautiful face. "Seeing you weaker than me, it's actually very exciting." Xiaomeilin's expression sent chills down Yuan's spine. "It won't stay like this for long," he quickly said. "Then I should take advantage of this moment while I still can," she said while licking her lips. The next moment, Xiaomeilin's prowess skyrocketed, and she started pushing back Yuan with seemingly no effort. Even when using nearly every trick he had, Yuan still found himself completely overwhelmed by Xiaomeilin's prowess. Not only is she not using her celestial ki, but even her weapon is lacking. Yet, she's overpowering me to such an extent, Yuan couldn't help but smile despite the situation. If Xiaomeilin were released to the outside world and upgraded her weapon, who knows how much more of a monster she would become? After being tossed around by Xiaomeilin for several more hours, Yuan finally said, "All right, how much longer do you intend to mess around? I need to speak to your father. It's about Xiao Hua." Xiaomeilin stopped her movements and lowered her sword. "My junior sister?" "Now that you mentioned her, where is she? Did you not come here with her?" she said as she looked around. "She's currently in my dantian, but she cannot come out due to reasons." Xiaomeilin narrowed her eyes slightly and mumbled, "Could it be? Did it already start?" "What do you mean?" Yuan asked after hearing this. Xiaomeilin shook her head and said, "I'll let father explain it to you instead. I'll take you to him now." "All right." Yuan nodded as he stowed away his weapon. "Ah, right before we leave." Xiaomeilin's expression suddenly hardened as her cold gaze swept over sect leader Zhu and the others. "What should we do with them? Want me to kill them all?" Despite Xiaomeilin not paying attention to them, none of them dared to leave the scene. After all, even if they snuck away, they would never be able to truly escape. Original content can be found at Novel Fire Net. Have mercy. Sect leader Zhu, who was still in his soul form, pleaded. However, Yuan remained indifferent as he commanded, "Kill them all, as you wish." Immense killing intent erupted from Zhao Meilin the next instant, her body shrouded in a crimson aura that bled into the air, saturating the atmosphere with malice. As Zhao Meilin raised her sword, every member of the chaotic sect instinctively turned to flee, but before they could escape, she brought her blade down in a single fluid motion. In the blink of an eye, the air split, and so did they, their bodies torn apart into countless pieces all at once. Power of the Void. To Yuan's astonishment, Zhao Meilin was wielding the power of the Void, an ability so rare that few cultivators could even comprehend it, let alone command it to such a degree, and although slightly, her understanding surpassed even his. "What do you think?" Zhao Meilin asked, turning to Yuan with a faint flicker in her eyes, as though expecting his praise after annihilating the chaotic sect. "Where'd you learn to wield the power of the Void?" he asked. "I comprehended it through studying spiritual rifts," she calmly responded. "Seriously? How long did that take? Longer than it took me to reach the 9th level of God Ascension." "I see. Ready to leave?" Zhao Meilin then asked. "Yes, actually, hold on." Yuan nearly forgot about Mu Xuelian and went to fetch her. "Who's that?" Zhao Meilin asked, her eyes narrowing in suspicion as they fell upon Mu Xuelian. Chapter 208, Meeting. The Asura Clan. "This is a friend of mine, Mu Xuelian." Yuan casually introduced her. Zhao Meilin suddenly vanished into thin air before appearing before Mu Xuelian like a ghost. "Can I help you?" Mu Xuelian calmly asked. Zhao Meilin narrowed her eyes slightly and responded, "There's something about you that I don't like. What are you hiding?" Yuan raised an eyebrow at Zhao Meilin's words and wondered if she could sense Shiva, who was hiding within Mu Xuelian's body. If so, that would be pretty impressive. Sure enough, Zhao Meilin could sense something mysterious lurking within Mu Xuelian, something that made even a powerhouse like her instinctively tread with caution. "I don't know what you're talking about." Mu Xuelian shook her head. "Whatever, just don't cause any trouble." Zhao Meilin vanished into thin air again. This time she reappeared right beside Yuan. "Let's go, shall we?" Zhao Meilin said as she grabbed his arm and pulled him forward, speeding into the distance. Sometime later they arrived at the burning tree, a colossal black tree wreathed in purple flames. Beside it lay a vast, dried-up lake, its cracked surface reflecting the eerie glow of the fire. Yuan gazed at the tree, his eyes narrowing slightly. Though its flames burned with fierce intensity, the heat was far weaker than he'd anticipated, and there was something inherently unusual about their nature. "What kind of fire is that?" Yuan asked, unable to discern its nature. Zhao Meilin shrugged. "Who knows? That tree was once just an ordinary one, but after being struck by countless bolts of lightning, it caught fire, and the flames have never gone out. It's been burning for tens of millions of years now. I believe it's a type of alchemy flame," Feng Yuxiang remarked within Yuan's dantian. "Alchemy flames, huh? Is there a way for me to collect it?" he asked. "Yes, there is. Inside my spatial ring, you'll find the Phoenix Sealing Jar. It's a treasure that is specifically used to collect flames." Yuan ignored the ominous name and searched Feng Yuxiang's spatial ring for the item. A moment later, he used it to collect the purple flames. Zhao Meilin watched his actions without uttering a word, almost as if it was none of her concern. Only when Yuan finished with his business did Zhao Meilin speak. "Done?" "Yes." Without another word, she swept her arm through the air, rending space itself open, and revealing a pitch-black gateway to the void before entering it. Yuan and Mu Xuelian silently followed her. Moments after stepping into the void, a flash of blinding light engulfed Yuan. When his vision cleared, he found himself beneath a radiant sun suspended in a clear blue sky, a striking contrast to the apocalyptic gloom of the primordial realm he had just left behind. Not only that, but spiritual energy was abundant around them, almost as if they'd returned to the 9 heavens. "Did we leave the primordial realm?" Mu Xuelian questioned as she looked around with a puzzled face. "No, we're still inside the primordial realm," Zhao Meilin said. "But the spiritual energy here, It's from the spirit tree? What is the spirit tree, anyway? Yuan suddenly asked. You'll find out soon enough, Zhao Meilin replied with a mysterious smile. Now, let's meet the old man. Not far ahead stood a vast estate, its ancient architecture reminiscent of the grandeur of the primordial era. Even without using his divine sense, Yuan could sense many powerful presences coming from it. When they reached the entrance, they were greeted by a handsome young man who looked to be in his early 20s. Let me introduce you to Xiao Chen, the youngest in our family. He's my little brother. Yuan raised an eyebrow at this information and remarked, but I don't recall such an individual in the Asura clan. That's because he was born after we entered the primordial realm, Zhao Meilin explained. Follow current novels on novefire.net. Born? Your father hooked up with someone in this place? Yuan wore a dumbfounded look on his face at this revelation. Something like that. Does that mean you have a new mother right now? Zhao Meilin silently nodded. A strange sensation suddenly rippled through Yuan, stirring a buried memory of Zhao Meilin's first mother and his bitter connection with her. You must be Master Tian? It's an honor to finally meet you after all these years, said Zhao Chen, snapping Yuan out of his thoughts. Yuan looked at him and said, You don't have to address me as Master Tian, since I never taught you. Just call me Yuan. Meilin, you too. Tian Xian is long dead. I am now Yuan, he continued while staring her in the eye. Is that an order? She asked, with a perplexed look in her gaze. No, it's not. Then I will continue to call you Master Tian since it's what I'm used to. She calmly responded. If that's what makes you more comfortable, Yuan said with a defeated smile. Anyway, you can get to know more about Zhao Chen later. The old man is waiting for you. Yuan nodded, and they stepped into the residence. Yet instead of stopping inside, they continued straight through the estate and into the line of trees beyond. A few minutes later, they reached a tranquil lake, where a handsome middle-aged man with a naturally sharp and stern countenance sat cross-legged upon the water's surface, silently cultivating. Go ahead, Zhao Meilin said to Yuan. Yuan silently approached the lake the next moment. When Yuan reached the edge of the lake, the handsome man slowly opened his eyes and spoke in a soft tone. Forgive me, but I cannot move from this spot right now, much less give you a proper greeting. Yuan narrowed his eyes and asked, Is there something wrong? I must remain focused right now, so I'll explain everything to you in a bit. Take your time, Yuan said before sitting down on the soft grass. Thank you, my lord. The middle-aged man closed his eyes again and fell silent. Chapter 2209, Meeting the Asura Clan, 2. While Yuan waited for the patriarch of the Asura clan to finish with his business, he recalled Tian Xian's past with them. After avenging Xu Mei's death, Tian Xian did not stop his rampage. Since the Celestial Emperor was the true reason behind Xu Mei's assassination, he swore that he would not stop until he killed the Celestial Emperor. Aware of Tian Xian's desire for his life, the Celestial Emperor had no choice but to dispatch the Asura clan, his strongest allies at the time, to confront him. Before the Asura clan betrayed the Celestial Emperor and joined Tian Xian's side, they were the most powerful family in the divine heavens with influence that surpassed even the Celestial family. However, as powerful as they were, they still obeyed the Celestial Emperor. While most people swore their loyalty to the Celestial Emperor out of fear or desire, the Asura clan assisted the Celestial Emperor mostly because their ancestor, their first patriarch, Zhao Xin, was a close friend of the Celestial Emperor. At the Celestial Emperor's orders, the Asura clan sent elite warriors to deal with Tian Xian. But alas, not even they were able to stop Tian Xian. If anything, it ignited his fury and onslaught even further. When even their most seasoned warriors failed to halt Tian Xian's rampage, Zhao Xin commanded his son, Zhao Changming, and his daughter-in-law, Fei Zhen'er, to confront him. Zhao Changming and Fei Zhen'er were the most powerful in the Asura clan, only slightly weaker than Zhao Xin himself individually. Together, not only were they stronger than Zhao Xin, but they would even be able to give the Celestial Emperor a fair fight. With such a powerful combo going after Tian Xian, Everyone figured that it was only a matter of time before Tianxian took his last breath. Yet, after Xiao Changming and Fei Zhenner finally clashed with Tianxian, the outcome sent ripples of shock throughout the entire cultivation world. Not only did they fail to defeat Tianxian, but the battle also claimed the life of Fei Zhenner. Her death struck Xiao Changming especially hard, as he had opposed his father's decision to aid the Celestial Emperor from the start, and he had never wanted Fei Zhenner to be involved. Discover more novels at novifire.net. Many expected Xiao Changming to pursue Tianxian, the murderer of his wife, just as Tianxian had once hunted Supreme General Mo for slaying Xu Mei. Yet to everyone's shock, Xiao Changming turned his fury and blade not toward Tianxian, but toward his own father, Zhao Xing. After killing his own father, Xiao Changming turned his attention to the Celestial Emperor, who was baffled and enraged by this betrayal. After a series of fateful encounters, Tianxian and the Asura clan eventually began working together. Naturally, their relationship was strained at first. After all, Tianxian had slain Fei Zhenner. Yet, as time passed and their cooperation deepened, the hostility between them slowly began to fade. In time, Xiao Changming came to forgive Tianxian completely. However, Xiao Changming had 2 daughters with Fei Zhenner, and they still hated Tianxian even after their father forgave him. Although they too would eventually come to forgive Tianxian, it would take much longer, especially the youngest daughter. A few days after Yuan began delving into Tianxian's memories, Xiao Changming, who had been calmly cultivating atop the lake, suddenly opened his eyes and unleashed a deafening roar that shook the entire world. Snapping out of his trance, Yuan quickly assessed the scene. Xiao Changming, once serene, now writhed in agony, veins bulging across his face and body. "Meilin, is this normal?" Yuan turned to look at her for answers. "Yes, it's normal," she calmly responded. "He'll be done in a few minutes." Witnessing her calmness, even nonchalance, Yuan quickly calmed down and he continued to analyze Xiao Changming's state as time passed. Blood started bleeding from Xiao Changming's eyes, nose, and ears. He looks poisoned, but it cannot be something that simple. A curse, perhaps? Yuan tried figuring out Xiao Changming's condition but came up empty-handed. A few minutes later, Xiao Changming slowly calmed down, just as Zhao Meilin said. After splashing his face with the cool water below, Xiao Changming rose from the pond in a single motion, landing before Yuan with effortless grace. "Thank you for waiting, my lord. How long has it been since we last met?" "I'm not sure, since I have yet to restore all of my memories," Yuan shrugged. "Is that so? Well, the last time you visited, you were called Tian Yi? Tian Yi, the immortal monarch?" Yuan was surprised to learn that he'd visited the Asura clan as the immortal monarch. That was several eras ago, at least 100 million years. In that case, it's definitely been a while. Anyway, let's return to my residence first. We have a lot to talk about, after all. All right. Yuan followed Xiao Changming back to the Asura clan's residence. As Yuan, Xiao Changming, and Xiao Meilin entered the room, Zhao Chen escorted Mu Shuelian to the guest room to relax. Once they were seated, Zhao Changming looked at Yuan and asked, "Where do we begin? Why don't we start with your condition? Are you poisoned, cursed, even though Zhao Meilin has managed to reach the peak of God Ascension? You, on the other hand," Yuan said. Unlike Xiao Meilin, Xiao Changming's cultivation was only at the first level of God Ascension, far weaker than before he entered the primordial realm. Rather than advancing, his cultivation had actually regressed. "My condition is neither poison nor a curse. It's something akin to an illness," said Xiao Changming. "What?" Yuan raised his eyebrows in a puzzled manner. "An illness? I don't recall you ever being sick." "Well, it started after your last visit, more specifically after I started growing the spirit tree," he explained. "The spirit tree? You grew it?" "I thought it was something that originated from the primordial realm." Xiao Changming shook his head and said, "No, it was entrusted to me by Tian Yi, by you during your last visit." "What?" Yuan exclaimed at this revelation. Chapter 2210 Meeting the Asura Clan 3. "I told you to grow the spirit tree, then?" Seeing Yuan's reactions, Xiao Kangming could guess why he was worried and said, "Indeed, I grew the spirit tree under your instruction. However, my illness did not originate from the spirit tree. That being said, it is related to my illness."
What?
Yuan raised his eyebrows in a puzzled manner. Xiao Kangming continued to explain, "Firstly, about my weakened cultivation. It has nothing to do with my illness. To grow the spirit tree, I had to feed it my cultivation. Naturally, my cultivation would decline afterward, so I would have to regain my cultivation and repeat the process. I had recently finished feeding the spirit tree my cultivation, hence why I am only at the first level of God ascension." Yuan swallowed nervously before asking, "How many times did you feed the spirit tree?" Xiao Changming fell silent for a moment before responding in a nonchalant tone, 10 times. I cultivated to the peak of God ascension from the first level 10 times, so this will be my 11th time. Yuan stared in shock at such a ridiculous answer. Although 10 may seem like a small number, one must consider the time and effort it takes to reach the 9th level of God, ascension from the first level. The vast majority of people cannot even do it once in their lifetime, much less 10, even if one possesses the innate talent and ability to reach the peak of God ascension. It'd take them millions of years to achieve it a single time. Xiao Kangming continued, "Normally the process isn't as painful as what you witnessed today, but that has become the routine after I was inflicted with the illness." Inflicted? So someone gave you the illness? Not someone. Something. Xiao Kangming sighed. Not long after the spirit tree sprouted, something tried to devour it, Xiao Kangming said. It came without warning, like a lightning strike from a clear sky. I tried to stop it, and after years of fighting, I managed to keep the spirit tree from being devoured. However, I was inflicted with this illness during the fight. "What is this thing?" Yuan asked, with a deep frown on his face, wondering if it was caused by an eternal. Xiao Kangming shook his head and said, "It had an ethereal form, so whatever attacked wasn't its true body. However, even without its true body, it was more powerful than anything I've ever faced before." "How does this illness affect you?" Yuan asked. "It attacks my dantian from time to time," Xiao Changming replied. "When it does, I have to focus everything I have just to defend myself. In those moments, I can barely even move a finger." "Let me take a look," said Yuan. Xiao Changming nodded and silently extended his arm, allowing Yuan to analyze his body with spiritual energy. Sure enough, Yuan sensed an ominous energy coiling around Xiao Changming's dantian, like a sinister flame devouring it from within. However, it was currently suppressed by Xiao Changming. Yuan retrieved the sacred chalice of purification and said, "Feed it some of your blood. This treasure can remove pretty much any curse out there." Xiao Changming didn't question Yuan and followed his instructions. The chalice consumed Xiao Kangming's blood, but it did not react, meaning that he wasn't cursed. "Now that we've confirmed it's not a curse, let me try to absorb it." Hearing this, Xiao Kangming instantly retrieved his arm and said in a stern tone, "Absorb it? What if it inflicts you as well?" "Sorry, but I'll have to refuse." Yuan shook his head and said, "I just want to see if it's poison. Don't worry. I have achieved true poison immunity in case it is. It's still too risky." "Kangming, have you forgotten who I am?" Yuan said with a slight frown on his face. "Or are you looking down on me?" "No, that's not it," Xiao Changming hastily responded. "Then what is it? You have managed to survive this long with it, yet you don't think I can handle it. Are you trying to say that you're now above me?" Xiao Changming opened his mouth only to close it shut without uttering a word. Then, after a moment of silence, "All right, you win." Xiao Changming sighed in a defeated manner as he extended his arm again. Xiao Meilin kept a serious expression as she watched their exchange, though she was smiling inwardly. This somewhat obedient, vulnerable side of her father was something she only ever got to see when he faced Yuan This. Chapter is updated by novelfire.net. Yuan tried to absorb the ominous energy within Xiao Changming the next moment, but alas, his poison immunity did not react to it either. I guess it's truly neither poison nor a curse. Yuan shook his head as he released Xiao Changming's arm. But don't worry, I'm sure we'll figure it out. While it would be great if I could get rid of this illness, it's not like I cannot live without being cured. Though this illness was life-threatening at first, I have long since gotten used to it. Now it's just a mild annoyance akin to a seasonal cold that comes and goes. Even if you say that, we should definitely try to get rid of it. It might not threaten you now, but things can always change, especially when we know nothing about it. Xiao Changming nodded, then said, "Now that you know my situation, let's talk about you, my lord. What brought you to the primordial realm this early? The spirit tree hasn't fully grown yet, you know. It's about 95% there." "Early, did we schedule my next arrival date last time?" Yuan asked, with raised eyebrows. "Not exactly, but you said that you'd return once the spirit tree is fully grown and ready to be harvested." "I see. Well, the reason I rushed to the primordial realm is because of her." Yuan proceeded to summon Xiaohua from his dantian. Of course, she was still slumbering. Junior sister Xiao Meilin mumbled when she saw Xiaohua's face. Xiao Changming remained silent, but his eyes were slightly squinted, as if assessing her condition. Chapter 211, The Solution to Xiaohua's Issue. "I understand the situation," Xiao Changming muttered after a moment of silence. "The balance between the two souls within her is broken, and they're currently clashing with each other, trying to consume each other." "What?" Yuan exclaimed in shock after hearing the last few words in Xiao Changming's sentence. "Their souls are trying to consume each other! This is the first time I'm hearing this." "I was told they were only fighting for control of the body. If he'd known it was this serious, he would have taken this matter much more seriously and visited the primordial realm much sooner. Perhaps that might have been the case initially, but from what I'm seeing right now, that is no longer the case." Xiao Changming looked at Yuan and asked, "How much do you know about our Asura clan's powers?" Yuan closed his eyes to ponder. "The violent nebula physique, right? Come to think of it, I don't actually know much about it, other than the fact that it makes you immune to physical attacks." Xiao Changming nodded and explained, "That's normal, since we didn't tell you about it. Of course, it's not like we were trying to hide it from you. Honestly, even we didn't know much about our own physiques in the past. However, as we continued to study and experiment with it, we've grown to understand our physique much better now. Anyway, our physique's true power lies in reincarnation." "What?" Yuan's eyes widened in shock. "Reincarnation," Xiao Changming repeated calmly, "but it comes with strict limitations and conditions that we still don't fully understand, even now. And so far only one member of our family has ever experienced it."
"You mean Xiaohua?"
"Yes, and she has experienced reincarnation more than once." "How does it work?" Yuan asked. "Well, we call it reincarnation, but it technically isn't true reincarnation," Xiao Changming explained. "She doesn't return to the cycle to await rebirth like others do. Instead, she's more like a phoenix revived after death, her soul never truly departing." "Then how does she return?" "After her death, her soul will wander the world until it finds a suitable vessel, usually before they are born. Once the conditions are fulfilled, she would take over that body, hence two souls in one body, and depending on the two souls' compatibility, they will either exist in harmony or they fight for control." Yuan sighed. "But there's something that I don't understand," he then said. "Xiaohua's soul should be incomparably stronger, so why does it seem like she's struggling?" "It's not that she's struggling. If she truly wanted to consume the other soul, it wouldn't take any effort. However, doing so could cause irreparable harm to the body. Most importantly, since she is aware that it isn't her true body, she's trying her best to hold back. So she's actually trying to stop herself from consuming the other's soul right now." Xiao Changming nodded. "Yes. Unfortunately, her soul is so powerful that once the process begins, she must constantly suppress herself. If she falters even for a moment, the other soul will be devoured. As for the other soul, she's subconsciously trying to fight back, even though it's doing more harm than good." Chapters first released on novi.fac.net. How often does this happen? And is there a solution to it? Yuan then asked. Xiao Changming closed his eyes and sighed. This is the second time it's happened, and she's reincarnated over a dozen times. There are only two ways we can fix this. Either Xiaohua's soul consumes the other and takes permanent control of the body, or we remove Xiaohua's soul and place her into a different vessel. After a moment of silence, Yuan asked, What did you do the last time? Xiaohua consumed the other's soul since that was the only option we realistically had. Another question. Her personality. Who have I been talking to this entire time? Is it Xiaohua or the other soul? Or do they swap from time to time? Xiaohua's personality had remained largely consistent throughout their time together, aside from the moment of her awakening. From that, Yuan deduced that only one soul had been in control until the awakening, likely the body's original soul. Still, he needed confirmation. For her new vessel to be compatible, the soul must closely resemble Xiaohua's, particularly in personality. Xiao Kangming explained. To maintain harmony, Xiaohua must also share her memories with the vessel's original soul. So even though two souls inhabit one body, they essentially become a single being. In simpler terms, her persona is a fusion of both. Even if the souls were separated, they wouldn't differ much from each other. Hearing this, Yuan finally understood why Xiaohua could seem like an innocent little girl at times, yet mature and cruel at others. That said, Xiao Changming continued, This only holds true when the souls remain in harmony. The fact that they're now in conflict means one of them has changed so drastically that they're no longer compatible. So what should we do, my lord? Without hesitation, Yuan responded, Naturally, we're going to separate them, then we will need to find another vessel for Xiaohua. Does it have to contain another soul? Yuan then asked. That condition is only for when she reincarnates. Since we're simply relocating her soul, a soulless vessel will work just fine. Though it might sound complex or unnatural, the process was akin to that of a god ascension cultivator whose physical body had been destroyed and required a new vessel. Do you happen to have an empty vessel lying around, or enough materials to create one? Yuan asked. Xiao Kangming shook his head. Unfortunately, we're still in the primordial realm, so things like creating a new vessel are simply unfeasible, as we need more than just spiritual energy. Are you telling me that I have to leave the primordial realm to obtain a new vessel for her? Even if I can do that, I don't think we'll have enough time for that. Yuan rubbed his eyes in a stressful manner. However, before Xiao Changming could respond, Feng Yushang's voice resounded. Young master, if I may, we might already have enough resources to craft Xiaohua a new vessel if we consider the treasures we already own. Mostly mine. Chapter 2-12. The solution to Xiaohua's issue too? Is that true? We have enough resources to craft Xiaohua a new vessel? Yuan asked for confirmation, just in case he misheard. Honestly, it depends on how complicated you want the vessel to be. But for a temporary vessel, we should have enough, said Feng Yuxiang. Like treasures, a vessel can be stronger or weaker depending on the resources used to create it. What about your soul weapon, the one that used to be occupied by Jiran? Yu Ning suddenly reminded Yuan about the baneful abyss. We could use it as a vessel until we craft her a proper one. Hearing Yu Ning's words, Yuan asked Xiao Tangming, I have a soul weapon without any occupants right now? Can I put her soul inside until we finish her new vessel? I have used it to house the soul of a god ascension cultivator before without any issue. Xiao Tangming pondered for a moment before responding. We've never tried putting her soul in a soul weapon before, but we have tried to temporarily contain her soul in a treasure with a similar function before the result. She subconsciously broke out of the treasure to find a new and more natural vessel, damaging her soul slightly in the process. Unlike normal people, Xiaohua cannot maintain consciousness as a soul, and she will instinctively seek out a proper one, likely a side effect of her powers. Anyway, to properly answer your question, it might work for some time, but it's risky, and if you don't find her a new vessel in time, she will try to break out of the soul weapon and hurt herself in the process. After a moment of silence, Yuan asked, "How long does it take to craft a new vessel?" "I might have the resources with me. I will have to see the resources first," he quickly replied. "Feng Feng, show him the materials we have." Feng Yusheng emerged from his dantian and immediately started looking through her spatial ring. "A phoenix, huh? The last time you came here, you also had a phoenix with you," Xiao Changming remarked as he stared at Feng Yusheng. "There are a few more resting within my dantian right now." Lan Yinging and Yingzi also came out the next moment, revealing themselves. Xiao Changming stared at Lan Yinging for a brief moment before turning to look at Yingzi. "It's not exactly the same, but it's similar," he mumbled a moment later. "Similar to whom?" Yuan asked out of curiosity. Xiao Changming responded as his gaze returned to Lan Yingying. "She reminds me of that white-haired divine serpent. As for this one, what were they called again?" "They have the ability to manipulate shadows." "Shadow Dweller," Xiao Meilin answered for him. "Did I bring all of the 9 divine supremes with me the last time I visited?" Yuan asked with a raised eyebrow. Xiao Kangming nodded. "Yes, and you claimed that you lot were on the way to confront gods. How did that turn out?" "How much do you know about the outer gods?" Yuan then asked. "I am aware of their existence, but that's about it. I don't know anything about their purpose or prowess. You left without explaining much, if anything, after all. Is that so well about that fight?" Yuan explained everything that happened after their clash with the outer gods, how they split the divine heaven into 9 different realms and earth, as well as the existence of Cultivation Online. New novel chapters are published on novelfear.net. Xiao Changming listened with intrigue. 9 heavens and Cultivation Online, huh? The world sure has changed a lot since the primordial era, but I guess that's only to be expected. "How long do you think it's been since you were thrown into this world?" Yuan smiled. After a brief pause, he asked, "Say, why did you decide to remain inside the primordial realm? I'm sure I could have taken your entire family out of this place the last time I visited. The fact you're still here must mean that you decided to stay here instead, right?" Xiao Kangming nodded. "That's right, after all, I had something to do here." "You mean the spirit tree?" Yuan asked. "Does it have to grow in the primordial realm? Why can't you cultivate it elsewhere?" "Because such a thing can only grow in this kind of environment?" Zhao Changming calmly replied, "A place utterly devoid of spiritual energy." "Quite the paradox, isn't it? The spirit tree generates spiritual energy, yet it cannot survive within it. It also needs spiritual energy to grow, but it must be force-fed by sacrificing one's cultivation like a hatchling unable to feed itself. I should have probably asked this earlier, but what even is the spirit tree? And why did I ask you to grow it?" Yuan then questioned. That Zhao Changming's expression suddenly turned serious, making Yuan swallow nervously. "I don't know," Zhao Changming responded in a serious tone. "What?" Yuan's eyes widened with shock at his response. "My lord, if I may be blunt for a moment, you're absolutely terrible at explaining things. In fact, most of the time you don't explain anything at all and just give the bare minimum of instructions." Xiao Kangming rubbed his eyes and continued, "Do you know what you told me when you handed me the spirit tree? Word for word, you said, 'Nurture this to the best of your ability. I'll return when it matures.'" Xiao Meilin couldn't help but chuckle at his words. "That being said, I am also at fault for not demanding more details." That's Yuan was left speechless. "Maybe I'll remember once I see the spirit tree for myself later," he said after a moment of silence. Xiao Kangming let out a faint sigh. "Of course, the spirit tree isn't the only reason I chose to remain here after the war. I needed time to gather my thoughts and to atone for my failures, both as a leader and as a husband." Yuan wasn't sure how to respond, so he remained silent. Suddenly, Feng Yushang's voice resounded, "Young master, it's done. I have gathered all of the resources that can be used to create a vessel." "We'll continue this later," Yuan said to Xiao Tangming before turning toward the table, where more than a dozen treasures lay neatly arranged. Chapter 223, Li Zhenwu. Well, what do you think? Feng Yushang asked as she showcased her treasures with a prideful air around her. Xiao Kangmeng took a moment to look over the treasures before responding with a surprised expression. I'll be honest with you. I can't identify even half of the treasures here, but judging from their intense aura, I'm sure they're all priceless treasures, beyond anything I anticipated. If we have this quality of treasure, we can definitely make a top-grade vessel. In that case, allow me to introduce them to you, Feng Yushang said as she began identifying the treasures and explaining their uses. This right here is the exalted divine crystal, a treasure used to store a massive amount of spiritual energy. It can be used to create the dantian. The item right next to it is the 9-flame heart pill, which can be used to create the heart. Not only will it give her vessel improved resistance to fire, but it will strengthen any fire element techniques. Next is the primordial essence root, which will be used for her spiritual veins and give her superior cultivation speed. Feng Yushang pointed at a bottle of red liquid and continued, "This is Phoenix blood mine, to be precise. However, we will need more blood, preferably human blood from the same family. I can give my blood." Xiao Meilin raised her hand. Feng Yushang nodded and continued explaining the treasures. This is the heavenly marrow essence. It's usually used for crafting treasures, but it can also be used to forge bones. These are the main ingredients for her vessel. The rest are mainly used to enhance their effects, but I will still explain them a few minutes later, Feng Yushang finished. Not just Zhao Milin, but even Zhao Tangming was left speechless by Feng Yushang's resources. Are you sure we can use such precious ingredients? Honestly, even I would want to move my soul into a vessel made with these ingredients, said Zhao Tangming. Feng Yushang looked at Yuan and said, originally I planned on using them to strengthen the young master. Yuan smiled and said, just your thoughts are enough. Moreover, at my current level, these treasures will have minimal effect, so it's better to use them for Xiaohua. Feng Yushang, right? I, the Asura clan, will never forget this debt. Zhao Changming said with his head slightly lowered. Feng Yushang rubbed her nose and responded in a stiff tone. Honestly, I'm only doing this for the young master, so you don't owe me anything. It doesn't change the fact that you're the reason Xiaohua will have a new vessel. So, is this enough to craft her vessel? If so, how long do you think it'll take? Yuan asked a moment later. Xiao Changming nodded and replied, this is more than enough. In fact, we can make a vessel with only half of it. The rest is just a bonus. As for how long it will take, I haven't attempted to craft a vessel since the primordial era, so it might take me a couple of weeks just to be safe. I don't want to mess up these precious ingredients after all. All right, I'll leave it in your hands then. This text is hosted at NovelFireNet. Yuan placed Xiaohua back inside his dantian shortly after. I'll need a few days to prepare myself. Make yourself at home until then. Xiao Kangming left to prepare a moment later. Meanwhile, Xiao Meiling brought Yuan to Mu Shuelian, who was waiting in the guest room. However, when they arrived, Mu Shuelian was not alone, and there was another beautiful woman in the room with her. The two were quietly sharing tea, but the moment Yuan saw the woman's face, his body went rigid, his eyes widening in utter shock and disbelief. Fei Zhenner, Yuan muttered. The beautiful woman greatly resembled Zhao Changming's dead wife, the one Tian Xian had personally killed in the past. The resemblance was so uncanny that he wouldn't be surprised if this woman were actually Fei Zhenner. Seeing Yuan, the woman stood up and gracefully bowed to him. You must be Master Tian. I have heard a lot about you from my husband. I am Li Zhenwu, and it's an honor to finally meet you. Yuan turned to look at Zhao Meilin, who was standing right behind him and chuckling at his reaction. I knew you'd be surprised when you see her. The resemblance is uncanny, right? She remarked. Li Zhenwu smiled and said, I was told that I greatly resemble my husband's late wife, but I never really took it to heart. However, seeing your reaction, I cannot help but wonder just how much I resemble her now. Yuan swallowed nervously and replied, You are a splitting image of her if you claim to be Fei Zhenner. I wouldn't have doubted you in the slightest. If you don't mind me asking, are you busy right now? Li Zhenwu suddenly asked me. No, I am not busy. Li Zhenwu clasped her hands together at his words and spoke with an excited smile. In that case, can you tell me some stories about my husband? This might sound weird, but he only ever talks about you, so it's not an exaggeration to say that I know you better than my own husband. I don't mind, but wouldn't it be better if you just asked him? Li Zhenwu shook her head and sighed. I have tried, but the topic always ends up shifting to you. All right, I'll tell you everything I know about Kangming. Yuan nodded. Thank you. Let me grab some more tea first. Once Li Zhenwu left the room, Xiao Meilin looked at Yuan and said with a smile, Try not to kill her this time, okay? Yuan rubbed his eyes and sighed. I know you're joking, but... Xiao Meilin chuckled for a bit before suddenly turning serious. Master, she doesn't know how my late mother died, how you killed her, so try not to mention that. All right. Yuan nodded with a serious face. Chapter 2214, Li Zhenwu 2. Once Li Zhenwu returned to the room with more tea leaves, Yuan began telling her stories of his adventures with Zhao Changming. Mu Shuelian stayed in the room to listen since she had nothing else better to do. Xiao Meilin also decided to stay for the nostalgia. Meanwhile, Zhao Changming began preparing to forge Xiao Hua's new vessel, running countless simulations within his mind. Just as Tian Qiwan could refine his crafting skills through mental training alone, true masters possess the ability to temper their skills entirely within the realm of thought. Naturally, this was no simple feat, and it placed immense strain on the mind and demanded extraordinary soul and mental strength. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye, and Zhao Changming emerged from his room with a confident look on his face. After doing hundreds of simulations within his head, he was now prepared to create Zhao Hua's vessel for real. Where's the Lord, Zhao? Tangming asked Zhao Chen, who had been waiting outside for him to finish. He's currently with mother and senior sister, Zhao Chen calmly responded. Bring me to him. Zhao Chen nodded and without a word led Zhao Changming to the guest room. Even before they reached the room, Zhao Changming could hear Li Zhenwu's gentle laugh echoing in the halls. When they arrived, Zhao Changming walked through the already opened door and said, I should have introduced you to my wife first before I went into seclusion. I apologize. Yuan looked at him and casually, dismissively waved his hand. It's fine. I was just telling her about our adventures in the past. After all, you never talk about yourself, Li Zhenwu said as she sipped on her tea. I don't? Zhao Tangming replied with raised eyebrows. You would try, but you always end up talking more about Master Tian here. Zhao Tangming opened his mouth but closed it when he realized she was right. Get full chapters from novelfear.net. Anyway, I'm ready to start crafting Xiao Hua's new vessel. Do you want to watch, my lord? Yuan nodded. You're making a new vessel for Xiao Hua? This is the first time I'm hearing this. Li Zhenwu spoke with a surprised face. I'll explain on the way, said Xiao Meilin. Sometime later, they all gathered in another room, one that was fortified with many powerful formations. The room also had a strong medicinal scent, and a cauldron sat in the middle of the room. The alchemists mainly use this place for their alchemy, Zhao Changming said. Also, we will need an alchemist for this, so... Yuan followed Zhao Changming's gaze to Li Zhenwu and asked, You're an alchemist? She nodded. Yes. In fact, I was once the leader of the Inferno Alchemists. I handed that spot to the current leader after marrying into the Asura clan. Is that so? Yuan wondered if Li Zhenwu's connection to the Inferno Alchemists was the true reason behind their collaboration with the Asura clan. Zhao Kangming retrieved the ingredients for Xiao Hua's vessel and placed them beside the cauldron. Here are the ingredients we will be using, Zhao Kangming said to her. Li Zhenwu approached the ingredients with a look of shock on her face. I don't even recognize them, she responded in a stiff tone. I'll explain them to you now, Zhao Kangming said before repeating what Feng Yusheng told him. A few minutes later, Li Zhenwu sighed. You know, I would have appreciated a bit of warning about this, at least enough time to prepare, although I have crafted vessels before they're all low quality made from trash ingredients. This is like suddenly handing a craftsman who is only used to low-quality material the best materials in the world and telling them to create a masterpiece. Sorry, but I forgot. It's also been a while since I crafted a vessel, so I immediately went into seclusion. If you need some time to practice, we can wait for you. I will need a few days to prepare the ingredients anyway. Practice with what ingredients? Even if you give me a decade to practice with trash ingredients, it won't help me with these priceless ingredients. Mental training won't help either, since I have never handled ingredients even close to the ones before me right now. You're the best alchemist in the primordial realm, so I'm sure you'll be fine in here, perhaps. But I doubt I will be able to compare to even ordinary alchemists in the outside world. Don't sell yourself short now. Moreover, you'll only be working as my assistant this time, as I will be doing most of the work. I just need you to assist me because my cultivation has declined back to the first level of God ascension, said Zhao Chengming. If I'm only working as your assistant guest, that's much more manageable. She nodded. During their whole conversation, Li Zhenwu's gaze never left the ingredients, almost as if she were mesmerized by them. Suddenly she turned to Yuan and asked, "Are ingredients like these abundant in the world outside of the primordial realm?" "No." Yuan calmly shook his head. "Even in the 9 heavens, such ingredients are considered a rarity, priceless even. And you're willing to use them to craft a vessel for Xiaohua." "You're very generous," she said with a warm smile. Yuan shook his head. "There is no ingredient or material in this world that is more valuable than Xiaohua 900 anyway. Even though I'll only be working as an assistant, I need to study these ingredients before we begin." "Give me a few days," Li Zhenwu said. "All right, master. Since we still have some time, why don't you spar with me? I've been itching to exchange swords with you for a while now." Yuan responded with a stiff smile. "Didn't we spar with each other right before coming here?" "That doesn't count," she quickly said. "Why don't you take him to the spirit tree instead?" Zhao Chengming suddenly said, "Oh, that's a good idea. Let's see the spirit tree first. If we have time afterward, I'll spar with you," said Yuan. "Fine. I'll take you to the spirit tree." Zhao Meilin nodded. Chapter 2015, Saruk. Sometime later, Zhao Meilin brought Yuan to the spirit tree, which was located only a few miles away from the Asura clan's residence. Shortly after they left the residence, Mu Zhuelian, who followed them, spoke. "Yuan, Lord Shiva has something to tell you." What is it?" Yuan turned to look at her. "She said that man doesn't have long to live." "What?" Yuan raised an eyebrow. "That first-level God Ascension cultivator we were just with Kangming. What is her reason for saying such a thing?" Yuan immediately stopped moving and glared at her with a serious frown. Mu Shuelian closed her eyes and, after a moment of silence, responded in a different tone. "That man has been afflicted with a particular technique by a certain Eternal," said Shiva, who just took control of Mu Shuelian's body. "You mean his illness, so an Eternal was involved after all?" Yuan sighed. "What are you talking about?" Zhao Meilin asked. Yuan explained calmly. "The beings we know as outer gods refer to themselves as Eternals, and your father's illness was caused by one of them." "And how does she know that?" Zhao Meilin glared at Mu Shuelian with a suspicious face. "Long story short, there's an eternal living within her." Zhao Meilin's eyes narrowed at the revelation. "I knew there was something off about her the moment I saw her," she muttered. "Now I understand why. Master, why are you traveling with someone like that? Aren't you enemies with these outer gods?" He nodded. "Yes, but there are many of them out there, and I'm not at war with all of them." "Is that so?" "Well, this is news to me," said Zhao Meilin. "Anyway, what was that about father?" "He's going to die soon. Can you elaborate on that?" "He's managed to survive tens of millions of years with this illness after all." "That's because the technique used on him wasn't meant to kill him quickly," Shiva said. "It was designed to inflict pain for as long as possible. Tens of millions of years may seem long to mortals, but to us, Eternals, it's nothing. In fact, I have taken naps far longer than that." "Since you know what it is, do you know how to cure him?" Yuan then asked. Shiva calmly nodded. "Of course, it's actually very simple. I'm listening. You just need to absorb it," What? Yuan raised an eyebrow. Have you forgotten the essence of our powers already? The power of your physique? You mean I can just refine the illness into essence and absorb it, turning it into my power? Yuan asked with a somewhat dumbfounded face. Shiva silently nodded. In that case, let's return now, Yuan said to Xiao Meilin. What about the spirit tree? We're about to arrive. That can wait. Your father will be crafting Xiaohua's vessel soon, and I don't want anything to go wrong when that happens. Yuan didn't want to risk Xiao Chengming's illness affecting him during the creation of Xiaohua's vessel, and decided to take care of it as soon as possible. Moreover, Xiao Chengming's life was on the line, if you say so. Xiao Meilin didn't argue and immediately turned around. Sometime later, they returned to the room where Xiao Chengming and Li Zhenwu were. You're back already? Did you forget something? Xiao Chengming asked. No. I came back because I learned about the cause of your illness and the method to cure it, said Yuan. This chapter is keep dated by nov1fire.net. What? Xiao Chengming stared at him with a bewildered face. How did you acquire this knowledge in such a short time? After all, they'd only been gone for a few minutes. Yuan looked at Mu Shuelian and explained, Actually, there is an outer god dwelling within my friend here, and she was the one who told me about it. That's... Xiao Chengming was left speechless. As far as he was aware, all outer gods were enemies. Seeing his reaction, Yuan quickly explained. Just like humans, not every outer god is friendly with each other, and they even fight amongst themselves. In other words, not all of them are our enemies. I see, so what about my illness? Mu Shuelian then spoke. According to Lord Shiva, it's a technique used by the one known as Saruk, meant to torment you with unbearable pain. Then what about the treatment? I just need to absorb it, Yuan replied. Didn't you try that already? That's different, since I treated it like a poison. What I'm going to do this time is entirely different. It sounds risky. How risky is it? Xiao Chengming asked with a slight frown. It shouldn't be too risky, right? Yuan turned to look at Mu Shuelian. Lord Shiva said, It's not risky, but it will be very painful for you, the absorber, since you're essentially consuming the power of an eternal. You heard her. It's not risky, Yuan said with a calm smile. When do you plan on absorbing it? Xiao Chengming then asked. Right now, but we're about to start crafting Xiao Hu's vessel. That's exactly why we must do it now. I don't want anything to go wrong, and since there's a chance the illness might strike during the process, I want to deal with it before you start. Xiao Chengming couldn't refute his reasoning, since it was true that the illness could surface at unpredictable intervals. Yuan's concern was entirely justified. All right, let's get this over with. Xiao Chengming nodded. Hearing this, Yuan gestured for Xiao Chengming to take a seat before him. Once Xiao Chengming was seated, Yuan took his place behind him and rested both hands against his back. Yuan closed his eyes and started trying to sense the illness in Xiao Chengming's body. Li Zhenwu, who had been focused on the ingredients, paused and watched them in silence, a faint trace of worry flickering in her eyes. A few minutes later, once Yuan found the source of the illness, he said, I'm going to start now. Then he started to refine its very essence. Shortly after Yuan started to absorb it, a loud and unfamiliar voice thundered inside his head. Which bastard dares to covet this mighty Saruk's power? Chapter 2000, 216 Saruk's Threat. When Yuan heard this voice, he immediately delved into his mind, as this voice seemed more than just his imagination. Within his consciousness, he sensed that a fragment of the Saruk's power had transformed into a kind of link, forging a connection between them. It functioned much like a communication jade slip, allowing their minds to intertwine and exchange words directly. Wait a second. This presence, you're not an eternal. Saruk's voice returned before Yuan could respond to it. A mortal? How dare a mere mortal attempt to covet the power of the mighty Saruk? The voice roared, its fury intensifying as it realized its own strength was being refined by a human. And what are you going to do about it? Yuan responded in a provocative tone. This mighty Saruk has memorized your scent. The moment you leave the safe zone, this mighty Saruk will devour you. Ha ha ha. Yuan burst into laughter. You, who was driven back by a mere mortal while trying to steal the spirit tree, think you can devour me. You Eternals truly have wild imaginations. For a moment, the voice fell silent. When it returned, it dripped with malice. You are but an insignificant insect, one who cannot even begin to comprehend the magnitude of our power. Were it not for the absolute power's interference, your pitiful existence would have long since been erased. When this mighty Saruk attempted to covet the spirit tree, this mighty Saruk had only been using a single % of their true power while severely underestimating their opponent. However, it will not happen a second time. If you're truly so powerful and mighty, then why do you need the spirit tree, something planted by the very mortals you so disdain? Yuan asked calmly. This mighty Saruk has no intention to entertain a mortal's curiosity. Leave the safe zone if you dare. This mighty Saruk will be waiting for you. The voice gradually faded, and the link between them was abruptly severed. Though their exchange had lasted only a few brief sentences, several days had passed in the real world, and Yuan had refined half of Saruk's power from Shao Changming. Once he returned to his senses, Yuan ramped up the speed, he absorbed Saruk's power, and after a few more hours he completely devoured it. Eternal Constitution, incomplete, activated. Follow current nose on Novelfire. Net, Eternal Constitution, incomplete, has refined Saruk's essence. Through Saruk's essence refinement, your understanding of eternal essence has improved drastically. Yuan lifted his sweat-soaked palms from Zhao Changming's back and drew a deep breath. It's done, he said softly. Zhao Changming stared at his hands in awe. The invisible weight that's always pressed down on me is gone. Ever since Saruk's power took hold, his body had always felt sluggish and burdened, but now that sensation had completely disappeared. He turned around to face Yuan, who was utterly drenched in sweat, and asked, "Are you okay, my lord?" Yuan nodded. "Despite my appearance, I'm actually overflowing with energy." He turned to look at Mushuelian and said, "I spoke with Saruk. Shiva instantly took over Mushuelian's body and responded, 'What did you talk about?' 'Nothing much. They only threaten to devour me the moment I leave the 9 heavens. Shiva laughed. "I can't say I'm surprised. You should prepare yourself." Yuan raised an eyebrow and asked, "What do you mean?" Even amongst the Eternals, Saruk is considered very powerful around the top 20. You guys have a ranking? How many Eternals are out there? Before I was sealed in the 9 heavens, there were a total of 76 Eternals. Although more may have been born since then, it won't be more than a handful. 76 Eternals, huh? Then where do you rank? Yuan asked. Somewhere in the middle, I guess. Yuan was surprised to hear this. Shiva frowned at Yuan's expression. How dare you look at me like that? Are you mocking me for my ranking? Yes, there's a ranking among us, but the difference in prowess isn't as vast as you think. Saruk may rank above me, but that's only because the order is based on the quantity of our essence. In terms of strength, the gap isn't that great. If we fought seriously, there's no telling who will win. You misunderstood? I wasn't looking down on you. Yuan calmly shook his head, but refused to elaborate further. Anyway, I have a question, Yuan said. The primordial realm lies at the edge of the 9 heavens, so it should still be within the safe zone. Yet Saruk still managed to attack Changming. I thought the Eternals weren't allowed to intervene because of this absolute power. The absolute power's influence weakens the farther you are from its center, Shiva explained. So while we can't touch the 9 heavens, we're still able to intervene through other methods. However, even then, it's not easy and requires a lot of energy. Is that why Saruk hasn't returned since he failed to covet the spirit tree? Yuan mumbled to himself. After a moment of silence, Yuan asked Shiva, "What are the chances of me defeating Saruk right now?" Shiva sneered in disdain. "With your current level of eternal essence, you won't be able to touch him, let alone defeat him. Is that so? Yuan didn't inquire further. Sometime later, Xiao Changming said, "Now that my illness is gone, I feel far more confident about our chances of success." He looked at Li Zhenwu and asked, "How are your preparations going?" "I will be ready to begin tomorrow," she confidently replied. While they continued to prepare, Yuan went to take a bath. Time passed quickly, and after a full day of preparation, it was time to create Xiaohua's new vessel. "My lord, before we begin, there's something I must warn you about," Xiao Changming said to Yuan. "What is it? Once we transfer Xiaohua's soul into her new vessel, it may take some time for her to adjust. During that period, her memories could regress, and it will take some time for them to return." Chapter 22:17, Xiaohua's New Vessel. "Her memories will regress? How far will it regress?" Yuan asked, after hearing this. Xiao Changming shook his head and said, "It differs every time, so we won't know until it happens." "I see. Then we can only deal with it when the time comes," Yuan said. Moments later, Xiao Changming and Li Zhenwu approached the cauldron and sat before it. "Ready?" Xiao Changming asked as he faced Li Zhenwu. She took a deep breath before responding in a serious tone, "I am ready." Without another word, Li Zhenwu summoned her alchemy flames. Crimson fire blossomed around her, surging forward to envelop the cauldron until it was completely engulfed. While Li Zhenwu tended to the cauldron, Xiao Changming focused on preparing the ingredients. Once the cauldron reached the proper heat, he began adding them one by one. Yet not every material required the cauldron, as some demanded entirely different techniques and handling. There were many methods to craft a vessel, but Xiao Changming chose the most ancient one as it was the only one that existed in the primordial era. As the ingredients within the cauldron melded together, Xiao Changming employed a special technique to shape the remaining materials. The result, however, resembled not a human form, but rather a crude doll. "The ingredients are ready," Li Zhenwu said a few hours later. Without a word, Xiao Changming opened up the cauldron and tossed the doll inside. Once the doll entered the cauldron, Xiao Changming began infusing the rest of the ingredients together. Time flowed swiftly, and before they knew it, 3 days had passed since they began crafting Xiaohua's vessel. "It's ready," Xiao Changming said as he lifted the lid of the cauldron and carefully drew out the vessel. Yet it was far from complete, as the vessel bore no rebalance to a human form, but rather an enlarged pill of condensed flesh. "My lord, can you take out Xiaohua?" Hearing this, Yuan immediately retrieved Xiaohua from his dantian. "Meilin," Xiao Changming suddenly called for her. Without a word, she walked over to Xiaohua before placing her hand on her head. "I'm going to split her soul now. It will take a moment, and she will start squirming around. Restrain her movement as much as possible," Xiao Meilin said to Yuan. "All right," he nodded. After a moment of silence, Xiao Meilin shouted, "Now!" The next instant, Xiaohua jolted awake, and a piercing scream tore from her lips as though she were being consumed by unbearable pain. Yuan quickly restricted her movements. "Ah!" It was Yuan's first time seeing Xiaohua in such agony, and the sound of her screams made his chest tighten with a deep, aching pain. Xiaohua's screaming did not stop for several minutes, but eventually Xiao Meilin managed to separate her soul from the other. After retrieving Xiaohua's soul, Xiao Meilin immediately gave it to Xiao Changming, who forcefully shoved it into the pill of flesh. Almost instantly, the fist-sized pill began to expand, swelling until it grew to the size of a watermelon within moments. Moments later, limbs began to sprout from the pill, its shape twisting and expanding until it rapidly took on the form of a human body. The form first took shape as that of a newborn, then swiftly matured into a young girl. As the growth ceased, her features began to refine, each detail becoming clearer, her face and form taking on a lifelike complexity. In the span of a single minute, the pill had transformed into a beautiful young lady, her features resembling Xiaohua's, yet distinct enough to seem like a different person. Lastly, her hair began to flow down her back, a lustrous pitch black, streaked with faint shades of violet that shimmered in the light. "How did it go?" Yuan asked in a slightly nervous tone. Xiao Changming responded as he placed a piece of cloth over Xiao Hua's naked body. It went well. Her soul has accepted its new vessel. Now we just need to wait for her to wake up. What about her? Yuan looked at the young girl resting in his arms. Xiao Meilin pressed her hand against the young girl's forehead to check her soul. Her soul isn't damaged, but it's severely weakened. If you have any soul-strengthening medicine, feed it to her once she wakes up. All right. Ding, Xiao Hua's status has been updated. Yao Hua servant grade, Celestial, Master Yuan, Cultivation. First level Spirit Apprentice, Legacy, Supreme Heaven's Legacy, Evil God's Legacy, Bloodline, Chaotic Asura Bloodline, Physique, Violet Nebula, Physique. This chapter is updated by novelkire.net. Huh? Yuan raised an eyebrow when he saw Xiao Hua's updated status. What's wrong, my lord? Xiao Changming asked after seeing his puzzled face. Your bloodline, what is it called again? Yuan asked. The Chaotic Asura Bloodline. Xiao Changming quickly replied, Not evil God's true bloodline. Yuan stared at him with a dumbfounded face. No, we're not related by blood. So how could we carry your bloodline? Then Yuan swallowed nervously as many questions appeared in his mind. However, before he could even ponder them, another notification appeared. Ding. Status has been updated. Servant grade. Master Yuan Cultivation 9th level Spirit. Enlightenment. Legacy Supreme Heaven's Legacy. Bloodline. Evil God's True Bloodline Physique. Yuan's eyes widened with shock after seeing this second notification. Evil God's True Bloodline? If Xiao Hua's status has already been updated, then this status must belong to... Yuan stared at the young girl in his arms, his heart pounding rapidly. Hey, Kangming, a quick question. Where did Xiao Hua find this girl? Who are her true parents? Xiao Changming pondered for a moment before responding. Normally, when Xiao Hua reincarnates, we follow her soul until she finds her next vessel. However, this time, she purposefully hid her reincarnation from us, so we didn't realize she'd reincarnated until she returned home, already in her new vessel. Additionally, we didn't intend for her to participate in the Supreme Heaven's Legacy, and it was entirely her own decision to leave the primordial realm to search for you, he revealed, leaving Yuan speechless. The make-up chapter is not a one-day process. There will be many more chapters to come in the upcoming days. Chapter 2218, Evil God's True Bloodline. So Xiao Hua becoming an exile wasn't part of our plans. Yuan mumbled after learning of this surprising information. Why do you ask? Is there something wrong with that girl? Xiao Changming asked. Yuan looked at the slumbering girl and sighed. She has the evil god's true bloodline. What? That's impossible. Xiao Changming immediately exclaimed in a voice of pure disbelief. Unless there is another evil god out there that we don't know about, that would imply she belongs to your family. Even Xiao Meilin couldn't help but stare at him with eyes as wide as saucers. Yuan sighed. I'm just as confused as you are. At first, I thought the bloodline belonged to Xiao Hua, but now it's clear that the original owner of this body is the one who possesses the bloodline. It makes no sense, Xiao Changming said. There's no doubt this girl was born in the primordial realm. Unless you conceived a child during your last visit, there's no way she could carry your bloodline. Unlike physiques, bloodlines must be inherited. Yuan shook his head. Not always. Some bloodlines aren't tied to one's flesh, but to the soul itself. I'm living proof of that. Nu vivueth virus leak. Me velifier.net, you Xiao Changming mumbled. Despite never bearing a child as the immortal monarch, Yuan somehow managed to be born with the immortal monarch's bloodline, which meant that some bloodlines, if unique and powerful enough, could be bound to one's soul and be passed down even after their death through reincarnation. Yuan spoke softly. Before any being comes into existence, their soul must first take shape. In other words, the soul is born before all else, meaning even an unborn child would possess one. Are you saying that this child is the reincarnation of your... Xiao Changming swallowed nervously at Yuan's suspicion. Yuan smiled and said, "While this is just pure speculation, I cannot think of another reason why she possesses such a bloodline. Maybe there really is another evil god out there, and she is their child." Xiao Kangming shook his head. "Do you know what it takes for a bloodline to be recognized by the heavens, the universe, and come into existence? Power and fate? Only those with immense strength and a destiny that shakes the world have their bloodline recognized. The greater one's fate, the stronger their bloodline. If there was truly another evil god who managed to create their own bloodline, there's no way we wouldn't have known. The existence of bloodlines didn't simply appear out of nowhere. When a being of immense power and destiny left a lasting impact on the world, that influence would be recognized by the heavens themselves, thus giving birth to a unique bloodline. Such bloodlines could then be passed down through generations, granting their descendants extraordinary abilities beyond those of ordinary lineages. However, if one's existence surpassed mortal comprehension, like that of the immortal monarch, their bloodline would transcend the limits of mere flesh and blood and instead bind itself to the soul. Such a thing is possible. This is news to me." Xiao Changming muttered with a dumbfounded look on his face. "If this little girl truly turns out to be the reincarnation of your unborn daughter, what will you do then?" Xiao Changming asked quietly. Yuan fell silent for a long moment before replying. "How the hell am I supposed to know? Across all my reincarnations, I've only ever had one child as Tian Xian, and she died before she was even born." He paused, his voice softening. "Besides, even if she truly is the reincarnation of my unborn daughter, she has new parents now. She's no longer my daughter. No, in the first place, she can't even be considered my daughter. After all, my daughter was never born. Unlike Mishu and Chu Liuxiang, who retained memories of their past lives, Yuan found it difficult to have any special attachments toward her, much less see her as his daughter. Since his own child had never been born, there had been no chance for a bond to form between them. With that said, while she may not be my daughter, she is still family to me. Something akin to a little sister. After a moment of silence, Yuan spoke. "All right, let's stop lingering around and put these two to rest properly." While Xiao Meilin carried Xiao Hua, Yuan continued to carry the nameless young girl, bringing them to a room where they could rest on a bed. Sometime later, Xiao Kangming appeared before him and asked, "I know you returned early, but did you get to see the spirit tree?" "No," Yuan calmly said. "Why don't we go now? These two will probably remain asleep for a few days, so we have some time," Xiao Changming suggested. "Sure," he nodded. Thus they set out for the spirit tree again, with Xiao Changming tagging along this time. Meanwhile, Li Zhenwu stayed behind to watch over the slumbering girls. Sometime later, they arrived at their destination. This is the spirit tree. Yuan's eyes widened in surprise at the sight of the spirit tree. It was nothing like what he'd imagined, and its appearance defied expectation to an almost absurd degree. What were you expecting? A grand and massive tree? Xiao Meilin chuckled. "Honestly? Yes," he admitted. Before Yuan stood the spirit tree, a laughably small tree that barely reached his knees in height. Though its size was laughably small and disappointing, the tree itself was breathtakingly beautiful, almost ethereal. Its trunk gleamed with a soft emerald light, and its leaves shimmered with a gentle, otherworldly radiance. Beyond its appearance, the tree exuded an overwhelming surge of spiritual energy, so vast and pure that Yuan had never experienced anything like it before. How can something so small generate so much spiritual energy? Mu Shuelian remarked with a bewildered look on her face. "I am feeling bloated with spiritual energy just from being near it." "If you want to know its origins, you'll have to ask my lord," said Xiao Changming. However, Yuan shook his head and sighed. "Unfortunately, I don't remember, and it's not triggering any memories right now." Chapter 221's ninth, Spirit Tree. By the way, you said the spirit tree hasn't fully matured yet. Yuan suddenly recalled Xiao Changming mentioning this earlier. He nodded and confirmed. "The spirit tree is still growing." After a brief pause, he continued, No, that's not quite right. To be honest, the spirit tree hasn't grown in tens of millions of years. No matter how much cultivation I pour into it, it remains unchanged. In the beginning, it responded, showing clear signs of growth each time I fed it my energy, but that ceased not long after it reached this form. He sighed softly. I suspect there's a unique cultivation method required to nourish it. Unfortunately, I lack that knowledge, so this may be as far as I can go. Is that so? Yuan stared at the small eternal tree before him with a pondering gaze, seemingly in deep thought. Xiao Changming and the others silently waited for his next action. After a moment of stillness, Yuan raised his hand, palm facing downward above the spirit tree. Without warning, he drew a sharp cut across his palm, letting his blood drip onto the tree below. The others watched in quiet intrigue, while Yuan himself felt strangely numb, as his actions were guided not by thought, but by pure instinct. The moment Yuan's blood touched the spirit tree, it was instantly absorbed, almost like a sponge with water. In the next breath, the entire tree began to change, its glowing green hue bleeding into a brilliant crimson. Oh, Yuan muttered in a surprised voice after seeing the aftermath. However, the spirit tree wasn't finished with its transformation. Mere moments later, the ground started to shake, growing more violent with every passing second. This is an earthquake? Xiao Meilin looked at the ground with a dumbfounded look. Natural earthquakes in the primordial realm were impossible, and the only time the ground would shake was when cultivators collided. However, there was obviously nobody fighting right now. Then, right before their very eyes, the spirit tree started to expand in size. Seeing this, Yuan and the others hastily backed away from it. In the blink of an eye, the spirit tree, which was only as tall as one's knees, enlarged until it rivaled the massive tree in Feng Yuxiang's immortal cave. Moreover, it wasn't just its size that changed, as the amount of spiritual energy it produced drastically increased too. In fact, the spirit tree released so much spiritual energy that it became visible to the naked eye, spreading through the world as a shimmering mist, an exceedingly rare phenomenon that only appears in such extreme conditions. Ding. The spirit tree has accepted your blood. The spirit tree is resonating with your blood. The spirit tree is attempting to form a blood contract with you. A blood contract, Yuan mumbled after seeing the notification. However, before he could think further, he sensed something trembling and retrieved a certain object from his robes. What's that? Xiao Meilin questioned out of curiosity as she glared at the token in his grasp. This is, upon seeing the token, Yuan was reminded of the man who had planned to strike against the Asura clan when the chance arose, the same man who had given him this token as a signal for when that moment would come. I completely forgot about this, but there is a group of individuals who have been planning to attack the Asura clan because of your monopoly on the spirit tree, and they're heading here now. He gave them a brief explanation. Is that so? Xiao Changming didn't seem surprised in the slightest by this information, almost as if he was aware of their intentions. He looked up at the sky and said, "A crack appeared in this world when the spirit tree grew, so anybody can enter this place right now. If there's a good time to attack us, it'd be right now." "Can you not fix the crack?" Yuan asked. "I already tried, but due to the spirit tree, I am unable to fix it. This world is too small for it, so it forcefully created more space." "It can do something like that?" Yuan looked at the spirit tree with raised eyebrows. "I'm sure you can tell, but the spirit tree isn't an ordinary treasure, and it has its own will." "A treasure with its own will?" "Well, that's not surprising, considering how long it's lived." Yuan said, "Ding. The spirit tree is attempting to form a blood contract with you. The most up-date N0vels are published on novelfire.net, and it's trying to form a blood contract with me at this very moment. So it recognizes you as its master, huh?" Xiao Tangming remarked. "Anyway, I'll go deal with the intruders. You can stay here to form the contract, my lord." "All right, Meilin, you're coming with me." "You don't need to tell me," she said with a cold smile on her face. It's been a while since I last had some fun. Hopefully there will be many of them. Xiao Changming and Xiao Meilin left shortly after to confront the crowd gathering outside at the burning tree. The spirit tree is attempting to form a blood contract with you. I get it. I get it. Let's form the contract now, Yuan said as he approached the spirit tree and placed a hand on it. The spirit tree has initiated a blood contract with you. Do you accept this blood contract? Accept. Blood contract has been initiated. Crimson roots abruptly burst from the ground, coiling tightly around Yuan, firm yet not painful. Moments later, an unfathomable surge of spiritual energy flowed into his body, flooding every fiber of his being. However, even with the immense amount of spiritual energy entering his dantian, they did not affect his cultivation in the slightest, almost as if the energy was being used for something else. Meanwhile, Xiao Changming, Xiao Meilin, and the rest of the Asura clan moved to confront the intruders gathered outside at the burning tree. By the time they arrived, thousands of experts had already assembled, their auras filling the air like a storm on the verge of breaking. Chapter 2220 Spirit Tree, even before Yuan arrived at the Asura clan. Scouts had been stationed near the burning tree, watching closely for any opportunity to strike. Then, when Yuan awakened the spirit tree, it cracked open the Asura clan's world, opening its sanctuary to the outside world. The Asura clan's world is open, but I don't see anyone going in or coming out. Did something happen to the Asura clan? This might be our chance. We need to notify the others immediately. Without hesitation, they activated the token, assembling everyone involved in the plan. In mere minutes, thousands of experts gathered at the burning tree, with many more to come. What happened here? Are we attacking the Asura clan today? The scouts explained the situation to the experts. We don't know what exactly, but something definitely happened inside the Asura clan, as their world has been open for several minutes now without anyone going in or out. This has never happened before. Could this be a trap? No, that doesn't seem to be the case. The portal is different than normal. It's cracked, almost as if it was forcefully opened. Not to mention the spiritual energy leaking from the portal. I can only imagine how much spiritual energy is on the other side. The people there swallowed nervously, their eyes shimmering with greed and desperation, their desire to take control of the spirit tree surging. At that moment, ripples emanated from the portal, and they watched as several figures appeared one after another. These figures were Xiao Tangming, Li Zhenwu, Xiao Meilin, Xiao Chen, and several of the Asura clan's servants. The Asura clan is here. The experts gathered at the burning tree were immediately alerted by their appearance. New over forks, Pratch Relege, Mealy Really Novelfire.net. Quite the crowd we have here today. Xiao Tangming remarked as he swept the crowd with a calm yet overbearing gaze. However, I don't recall calling any of you here, he continued. Or is there a banquet nearby that I am not aware of? Zhao Yuekin. Xiao Kangming's gaze stopped on one of the figures standing at the forefront, a man he recognized as the current patriarch of the Zhao family, one of the three great powers alongside the Inferno alchemists and the chaotic sect. Zhao Yuekin took a deep breath before speaking out loud. Xiao Changming, we've come to deliver an ultimatum. Your greed and monopoly over the spirit tree have gone on long enough. For millions of years, countless cultivators have been starved of spiritual energy, while your Asura clan hoards it without limit. His eyes burned with indignation. This ends today. Have you learned nothing from the celestial emperor you once fought against? The war of immortals and gods began because he monopolized the world's resources, forcing all under his rule. What you're doing with the spirit tree is no different. Hearing Zhao Yuechen's words, Xiao Tangming didn't even bat an eye and calmly responded, Then allow me to ask you two questions. If you nurture a chicken in your backyard, who owns the eggs it bears, and are you responsible for feeding everyone in the world with those eggs? What kind of nonsense is that? Zhao Yuechen frowned. Just answer my questions. The answer to such a question is obvious. I am not going to entertain you. Xiao Kangming sighed and said, I asked you those questions because the spirit tree was grown by me, so what's with monopolizing it, and who are you to demand the spiritual energy it produces? What? Zhao Jueqin and the others expressed shock after hearing such a thing, as it was their first time learning about the spirit tree's origin. Don't lie to us. There's no way you could have grown the spirit tree. Zhao Jueqin shouted, swinging his arm through the air in denial. I'm lying, then. Answer me this. Why is the spirit tree in my world where everything within is my creation? If you're going to claim that I moved the spirit tree inside, then where was the spirit tree beforehand? Zhao Jueqin opened his mouth but was speechless. There were many experts present who had existed in the primordial realm since the very beginning, but not a single one of them had ever encountered or heard of the spirit tree before the Asura clan created their own territory. Zhao Jueqin gritted his teeth in frustration, but he couldn't stop there. Regardless of whether you had grown the spirit tree or not, it cannot be compared to a chicken. It doesn't change the fact that you can still share it with others. Xiao Kangming's eyes narrowed, a flicker of anger flashing within them. Have I not shared it with you? He said coldly. I've shared its spiritual energy with the Inferno alchemists so the entire world could benefit from their pills. Not only that, but everyone here has received its spiritual energy before. For you to stand before me and claim otherwise is nothing short of a bold-faced lie. Zhao Jueqin trembled at his words before responding in a furious tone. If you have a full bowl of rice and you only share 1 or 2 grains with us, can you really call that sharing? How shameless of you! Xiao Kangming sneered. Do you think the spirit tree has unlimited spiritual energy or something? I have shared what I could. If you're not satisfied with that, it's none of my issue. In the first place, the spirit tree doesn't even belong to me. I'm merely looking after it for someone. Another lie. If the spirit tree doesn't belong to you, who does it belong to? Your mother. Don't make me laugh. Whoosh! Xiao Changming's expression darkened, and immense killing intent surged from him. Seeing this, Zhao Yuichen and the others subconsciously backed away. However, they quickly stopped and moved forward. Don't think you can control us with fear any longer, Zhao Changming. That's right. We're not afraid of you any longer. Xiao Meilin suddenly stepped forward and said, Father, I can't hold it any longer. Why waste your breath on them? They'll become corpses in a bit. Anyway, let me bathe in their blood already. After a brief moment of silence, Zhao Changming quietly nodded his head before muttering, Go ahead. Chapter 2221 Spirit Tree 3. With Zhao Changming's approval, Zhao Meilin drew her sword as she stepped forward, approaching the sea of experts before them. Do you really think you can defeat all of us with your pitiful numbers? Zhao Jueqin sneered. Only 2 of you are at the 9th level of God Ascension. The rest of you are between the 1st level and the 7th level. Even if you doubled your number, you won't be able to defeat us. Zhao Jueqin was unaware that Zhao Changming had fed his cultivation to the spirit tree and regressed back to the 1st level of God Ascension, so in reality only Zhao Meilin was at the peak of God Ascension. Li Zhenwu had the 2nd highest cultivation in the Asura clan at the 7th level of God Ascension, with Zhao Chen being the 3rd at the 5th level. The others were only between the 1st and 3rd levels. Xiao Meilin smiled at his words and said, This won't be our first time dealing with a crowd that far exceeds us in numbers. Original content can be found at Novelfire. Net. Suddenly, her aura erupted, flooding the area with an overbearing pressure that crushed down on the experts like an invisible mountain. Without uttering a single word, Zhao Meilin's figure blurred and vanished like a ghost. When she reappeared, she stood amidst their ranks, her presence radiating with a murderous intent so dense it made the air tremble. Watch out. Before anyone could even react, Zhao Meilin swung her sword through the air. It seemed to strike nothing, only empty space. Yet, a heartbeat later, more than 20 cultivators around her plummeted from the sky, their bodies cleaved into countless pieces. The cultivators froze in shock for an instant, but quickly regained their senses and retaliated, unleashing everything they had at Xiao Meilin without a thought for their spiritual energy. In the blink of an eye, the entire area erupted into chaos, transforming into a full-fledged battlefield. Li Zhenwu and the others didn't remain idle and swiftly joined the fray. However, Zhao Changming decided to stay behind to guard the portal, as he didn't want anyone to sneak inside and disturb Yuan. Because of the Asura clan's unique physique, which rendered physical attacks ineffective, the intruders were forced to abandon their weapons and rely solely on martial techniques to fight. Of course, this limitation applied only to Zhao Changming and those who possessed the Violet Nebula physique. Li Zhenwu and the servants, who were not part of the Asura clan by blood, remained vulnerable to physical attacks. That said, their weakness did not make them any easier to deal with. Ashura's blade of execution. Xiao Chen summoned a colossal blade forged entirely from killing intent, and with each swing dozens of experts fell, their lives snuffed out in an instant. As the battle raged on, the sky and earth were drenched in blood, crimson rain falling without end. Hundreds of experts under Zhao Yueqin had already fallen, yet their ranks showed no sign of thinning, as reinforcements continued to pour in, replenishing their numbers as fast as they died. Do not falter. It is only a matter of time before the Asura clan falls. Ming Xuanyang, Bai Zengtian, Wu Moyun, come with me. We'll take care of Xiao Kangming together. Zhao Yueqin roared as he went to confront Zhao Changming, followed by 3 other experts. Zhao Jueqin was a powerhouse at the 7th level of God Ascension, while the others were at the 5th or 6th level. Yet, despite being on at the 1st level, Xiao Changming didn't show even the slightest hint of fear or worry in his gaze. God of War's astral arts, Xiao Changming wrapped himself in a massive purple avatar and fought back without moving from his location. Though his cultivation had weakened to the 1st level of God Ascension, the God of War's astral arts relied more on soul strength than cultivation, and since only his cultivation had been affected by feeding the spirit tree, Xiao Changming's soul strength was still unfathomably strong, allowing him to contend with powerhouses of far higher realms easily. In just several exchanges, Xiao Changming had not only repelled Zhao Jueqin, but even killed one of the powerhouses. What the hell is this? I knew he was powerful, but this is beyond anything we know. Ming Xuanyang exclaimed in shock after witnessing Xiao Changming's overwhelming prowess. This bastard must have been hiding his strength this entire time. That's impossible. He was already monstrously strong before, and you're saying that wasn't even his full power? Zhao Jueqin shouted, clenching his fists as he glared at Xiao Changming, his voice trembling with disbelief and the bitter realization of his mistake. Zhao Jueqin, Xiao Changming said suddenly, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Your greatest sin today isn't daring to bare your fangs at me or the Asura clan. It's coveting the spirit tree, which belongs to my lord. Your lord, what the hell are you talking about? Still pretending you don't know what I'm talking about? Zhao Changming said, shaking his head in disappointment. There's only one person I would ever address as my lord, and you, someone who stood on the battlefield during the heavenly war of immortals and gods, should know exactly who that is. Zhao Jueqin's entire being froze as a certain individual appeared in his mind. You don't mean, he swallowed nervously. No, that's impossible. Zhao Jueqin shook his head. There's no way he's still alive. After all, he perished alongside the Celestial Emperor. Although most of the earliest inhabitants of the primordial realm were imprisoned before the fall of the first Celestial Emperor, the realm itself wasn't sealed until his successor took the throne. Before permanently closing it, the second Celestial Emperor cast a few more individuals inside who revealed the aftermath to the others. Of course, this included the Celestial Emperor's defeat and Tian Xian's death. Does it look like I am joking to you? Zhao Changming said with a serious expression, refusing to elaborate further. Chapter 222, Spirit Tree, 4. After a moment of silence, Zhao Jueqin muttered in a low voice, So what? So what if the evil god is alive? He suddenly roared. It doesn't change anything. As long as we're stuck in this world, the spirit tree is necessary to us, and we'll do anything to acquire it. Xiao Changming sneered, Even if you somehow manage to acquire the spirit tree, it's not something you can manage. Do you truly think the spirit tree is a treasure with limitless power? How naive. Once the spirit tree runs out of power, you will return to being deprived of spiritual energy. That's... Xiao Jiakan couldn't refute Xiao Changming's words. In fact, he never really thought about the spirit tree running out of power. After all, the spirit tree has supplied the Asura clan with seemingly limitless spiritual energy for millions of years without any issue. Of course, nobody but the Asura clan was aware that to keep the spirit tree alive, Xiao Changming had to feed it his cultivation. Zhao Juekin, I will give you and everyone here one last opportunity to turn around and forget about the spirit tree. Otherwise, I will have to cut you down, Xiao Changming said. He turned to look at Zhao Meilin, who was still slaughtering everyone around her like a madman, and added, "The longer you take to decide, the more casualties you will have." Zhao Juekin gritted his teeth and trembled. After a moment of silence, he responded, "I will not yield today. I will either acquire the spirit tree or perish trying." Xiao Changming shook his head in a disappointed manner. What a stubborn and foolish decision. If you wish to die so badly, allow me to grant your wish without another word. Xiao Changming resumed their battle, attacking first with God of War's astral arts. Meanwhile, inside the Asura clan's world, Yuan finished forming the blood contract with the spirit tree. Follow current novels on Novel Fire. Net, you have successfully formed a blood contract with the spirit tree. After forming the contract, the massive spirit tree had disappeared from the Asura clan's world and somehow entered Yuan's dantian. "Ye young master, what is this? The spirit tree has taken root inside your dantian," Feng Yuxiang exclaimed in shock. "I formed a blood contract with it, but I didn't expect it to move into my dantian," he said as he looked inside his dantian to see Feng Yuxiang and Lan Yingying gazing at the spirit tree with intrigue. Due to the spirit tree, your cultivation speed has increased by 500,000%. Due to the spirit tree, your dantian has significantly expanded in size, allowing you to hold more spiritual energy. Although the effects of the spirit tree seemed extremely good at a glance and could easily turn an ordinary cultivator into a prodigy, it wasn't very beneficial to Yuan, who already had a ridiculously fast cultivation speed. As for increasing his dantian size, it definitely helped a little. But it wasn't anything game-changing. There must be another use for the spirit tree. Yuan refused to believe that he had made Zhao Changming sacrifice so much of his time and effort for something so insignificant, and believed that he had yet to see the spirit tree's true prowess. Unfortunately, he didn't have the time to study the spirit tree as Zhao Changming and the others were still dealing with the intruders. However, just as Yuan prepared to leave to group up with the others, he halted his movements when he noticed a figure approaching him from a distance. The approaching figure was a beautiful young woman who appeared to have only just reached adulthood, yet within her eyes lingered an unfathomable depth of experience. "Xiaohua?" Yuan muttered as his eyes fell upon her. He should have felt joy at seeing her awake, but instead unease gripped his heart. Something was wrong. Her gaze burned with unmistakable fury, and the killing intent radiating from her was so intense it felt almost tangible, all of it directed straight at him.
"What's wrong?"
"Xiaohua," Yuan called out to her in a soft voice. "Are you hurt somewhere?" As Xiaohua slowly approached, a look of pure disdain twisted her beautiful facial features. Her voice dripped with venom as she snapped, "Don't you dare act so familiar with me, you bastard." Yuan was speechless, but he had an idea what was going on. Meanwhile, Xiaohua quickened her pace, her aura flaring violently as she began to release her cultivation. Although her cultivation had reverted to the first level of spirit apprentice upon obtaining her new vessel, the divine nature of her new body, combined with the dense spiritual energy saturating the air, caused her cultivation to soar uncontrollably, and with every step she took, her cultivation leapt by several levels. "My father may have forgiven you," Xiaohua continued, her voice trembling with fury, "but I will never forgive you for killing my mother." Sure enough, just as Zhao Changming had warned, Xiaohua's memories had regressed, returning to the primordial era, to a time before she had forgiven Tian Xian for killing her mother. Calm down for a minute, Xiaohua. Your memories are a bit messed up right now, but they should return to normal. Shut up. Xiaohua suddenly summoned a sword and leaped forward, striking Yuan without warning. Yuan calmly caught her blade with his fingers and sighed. If it'll make you feel better, you can strike at me as much as you want. Yuan decided to let Xiaohua do as she pleased until she calmed down and immediately loosened his fingers, releasing the sword without a word. Xiaohua struck again with zero hesitation, this time with more power. Yuan didn't even bother to block her sword and allowed her to strike his body. Even though her attacks had no effect on Yuan, Xiaohua refused to stop, striking at him again and again like a child throwing a tantrum in her fury. I swear I will kill you. Xiaohua roared as her cultivation soared again, entering Spirit Enlightenment. Chapter 2223, Xiaohua's Awakening. As Xiaohua's cultivation rose, her strikes became heavier and more powerful, and she even started using martial techniques. Young master, it looks like she really wants to kill you, Feng Yuxiang remarked as she watched from inside his dantian, feeling a bit dazed as she could have never imagined Xiaohua attacking Yuan so fiercely. Her memories regressed back to the primordial era, to a time when we didn't have the best relationship. Back then, she would always try to kill me when she had the chance. Yuan sighed with a bitter smile. I don't blame her, though. I did kill her mother, after all. What did you do to calm her? Lan Yingying asked. If you do it again, it might calm her again. I didn't do anything special. Whenever she tried to kill me, I would fight back and beat her up quite badly. It took some time and a lot of beating, but eventually she calmed down. Yuan said as he recalled his past. Feng Yuxiang and Lan Yingying were left speechless by his words. If you're going to ask me if I'm going to repeat the same process, I'll have to decline. I was a very different person back then. So what are you going to do? Continue to let her try to kill you until she regains her memories. Who knows when that will happen? Feng Yuxiang said, If you're unwilling to fight her, I'll gladly do it in your place, she said with a faint smile. I've always wanted to face her seriously. Besides, as fellow servants under the same master, it's our duty to clean up each other's messes. Of course, Feng Yuxiang didn't mean it in a malicious way. Due to their competitive relationship, it was only natural for her to want to fight Xiaohua. Sensing Feng Yuxiang's desire to fight, Yuan seriously pondered letting her fight Xiaohua. Don't worry, I won't harm her too much, she assured him. All right. Yuan eventually agreed he wanted to see if fighting Feng Yuxiang might help Xiaohua regain her memories faster. Right as Xiaohua went for another strike, Feng Yuxiang immediately emerged from his dantian to block it. Who the hell are you? Xiaohua exclaimed as she distanced herself from them. I am the young master's #1 servant, she proudly declared. Attacking your own master is a grave sin for a servant, even if you have lost your memories, servant. What the hell are you talking about? There's no way in hell I'd serve the bastard who killed my mother. Xiaohua roared normally. Servants were incapable of attacking their masters. However, Yuan didn't view Xiaohua or her strikes as a threat. In his eyes, she was just having a harmless tantrum, so no penalty was imposed on her. Feng Yuxiang shrugged. Anyway, if you insist on continuing to attack the young master, I will have to put an end to it. You stop me? I'd like to see you try. Xiaohua shouted as she lunged at Feng Yuxiang. By now, Xiaohua's cultivation had reached the peak of Divine Grandmaster. Meanwhile, Feng Yuxiang was at the peak of True Immortal. Yet, despite the disparity between their cultivation, Xiaohua went on the offensive, striking without a care, almost as if the difference didn't exist. Updates are released by novelfire.net. If Feng Yuxiang had been an ordinary cultivator, Xiaohua might have been able to overcome their difference and defeat her. However, Feng Yuxiang was no ordinary cultivator, but a primordial phoenix with the immortal monarch's seal. Feng Yuxiang dodged most of Xiaohua's strikes, but would occasionally strike back with her flames, barely putting any power into it, almost as if she was toying with Xiaohua. This power, a phoenix. Xiaohua narrowed her eyes after recognizing Feng Yuxiang's flames, though she couldn't explain why. Xiaohua felt an inexplicable irritation toward Feng Yusheng's very presence, despite having no memories of her. A phoenix? Serving a human? That's unheard of. Xiaohua muttered to herself, disbelief flashing in her eyes. What's wrong, you little brat? Is this all you've got? You won't be able to defeat me at this rate, much less defeat the young master. Feng Yusheng continued to mock Xiaohua as they fought, which only irritated her even further. Shut up, you damn pigeon. You're annoying as hell. Xiaohua shouted as her cultivation soared past the divine realm and entered the immortal realm, becoming a bronze immortal. Yuan raised an eyebrow when he heard Xiaohua call Feng Yusheng a pigeon, a remark that sounded exactly like something the present Xiaohua would say. Is fighting Feng Feng triggering her memories subconsciously? Yuan wondered. This is working even better than I expected. Feng Yusheng also noticed this and began to tease Xiaohua even more. In response, Xiaohua's attacks grew more fierce and her killing intent soared. As of this moment, Xiaohua's urge to kill Feng Yusheng has surpassed her desire to kill Yuan. Sometime later, Xiaohua's cultivation reached true immortal. However, it wasn't just her cultivation that improved. Her fighting style and movement have undergone drastic changes since they began, forcing Feng Yusheng to fight more seriously. This is more like it. I have always wanted to fight you seriously, but never got the chance. Feng Yusheng laughed excitedly as she started using her phoenix power more seriously, even transforming. After several thousand more exchanges, Xiaohua's aura suddenly erupted, her cultivation surging past the immortal realm and stepping into God Ascension. A flood of celestial qi burst from her body, shaking the air around them. Seriously? Feng Yusheng cried out, eyes wide with disbelief. She had never imagined Xiaohua's cultivation would break beyond the true immortal realm. Upon reaching the first level of God Ascension, Xiaohua's strength soared to unimaginable heights, and she began driving Feng Yusheng back with overwhelming force. Yet her aura showed no sign of stabilizing, and a few minutes later, her cultivation surged again, breaking through to the second level. Second level God Ascension. That's cheating, Feng Yusheng exclaimed. Chapter 22-24, Fighting Xiaohua. After Xiaohua's cultivation reached the second level of God Ascension, Feng Yusheng was no longer a match and was forced to go on the defensive. What's wrong, you annoying bird? Why have you gone quiet when you were talking so much just moments ago? Xiaohua spoke with a mocking smile on her face. Feng Yusheng gritted her teeth in frustration. She could never have anticipated that Xiaohua would enter the God Ascension realm this quickly. After all, it would normally take decades for someone to regain their full cultivation after obtaining a new vessel, but it hadn't been a full day since Xiaohua entered her new vessel. Don't you dare look down on me, you little brat. Feng Yusheng roared as her body erupted in flames, transforming into her true phoenix form. In an instant, a blazing pressure swept across the world, igniting the very air around her. Primordial fire. Feng Yusheng cried, beating her massive flame-wreathed wings once. A storm of invisible fire cascaded from above, raining down upon Xiaohua like divine wrath. A vicious light flickered within Xiaohua's eyes as her aura condensed for a brief moment before exploding like a bomb. Asura clan's immortal slaying art, Xiaohua roared as she unleashed one of the Asura clan's supreme techniques. In the blink of an eye, her power swept across the sky, extinguishing every trace of the primordial fire. What? Feng Yuxiang's eyes widened with shock, unable to believe how easily Xiaohua had removed her fire. However, Xiaohua's prowess wasn't the only thing that shocked Feng Yuxiang, as Xiaohua's cultivation had increased by another level right before she struck, reaching the third level of God Ascension. Young master, I don't think I can handle her any longer, especially if her cultivation continues to rise, Feng Yusheng said to Yuan using voice transmission. Yuan wasn't too surprised about Xiaohua's cultivation since she had already reached this level in the past. That said, he was definitely taken aback by how quickly she regained it. This can't be just the result of her new vessel, he thought. He checked her status, but the only thing that had changed from it was her cultivation. Young master. Feng Yuxiang cried for his help again when she could no longer hold back. Xiaohua immediately. Yuan responded, retrieving number 1 under heaven to block Xiaohua's attack. I'll take care of this, he said to Feng Yuxiang. Although he had no intention of fighting Xiaohua, the situation had escalated to the point where he could no longer afford to hold back. Look, who's finally done hiding behind a pathetic bird, Xiaohua mocked before Yuan could respond. Xiaohua shifted her gaze to Feng Yuxiang and continued, and you, now that you can no longer deal with me, you're going to make your master fight? How laughable. This damn brat. Feng Yuxiang's clenched fists trembled and her eyebrows twitched uncontrollably. However, she couldn't refute Xiaohua's words. Too bad it won't make any difference. Once I kill this bastard, I'll definitely take my time to kill you next, Xiaohua roared as she changed her focus to Yuan, her aura surging as she attacked him with newfound ferocity. Unlike his prior opponents, Xiaohua used her celestial qi without restraint. Although it wasn't as strong as it should be for someone at her cultivation, due to how quickly she improved it, it was still strong enough to push him back. What's wrong, Tianxian? You're a lot weaker than I remember. Xiaohua mocked as she continued pushing him back. That's because I am not Tianxian. My name is Yuan. Xiaohua's brows furrowed at his response, and she shouted, Do you really think I will fall for such a bald-faced lie? My father may be foolish enough to forgive you, but I am not like him. 1337. Xiaohua's cultivation continued to surge, and after many exchanges, she had another breakthrough, reaching the 4th level of God Ascension. Just how much further is her cultivation going to increase? Feng Yuxiang's jaws dropped at the scene. In order to clash with Xiaohua without hurting her or losing to her, Yuan was forced to use True Dragon Awakening and Chaotic Essence. Why did you have to kill Mother? Why? Xiaohua suddenly exclaimed, tears flowing down her face. I'm sorry. Yuan had no excuse and could only offer his apology. If you truly regret it, then let me kill you, atone with your death. Sorry, but I cannot do that. Then you don't really mean it. Xiaohua roared, her cultivation, entering the 5th level of God Ascension. Chapters first released on novear.net. I hate you. I hate you. Xiaohua's cultivation continued to soar without any sign of slowing down. In fact, it was speeding up when Xiaohua reached the 6th level. Yuan had to use Eternal Essence. A few exchanges later, Xiaohua's cultivation entered the 7th level. Xiaohua was now a threat that even Yuan could not handle. Damn it. Yuan growled through gritted teeth. Seeing no sign of Xiaohua calming down, he was left with no choice but to invoke his authority as her master for the first time ever. Halt, Yuan commanded, his voice echoing with undeniable authority. In an instant, Xiaohua froze mid-motion, her body stopping as if bound by invisible chains. What the hell is this? What did you do to me? Xiaohua exclaimed with a bewildered look on her face. He simply commanded you as your master. Feng Yuxiang calmly responded. What? That's impossible. I am not even his servant. Feng Yuxiang shrugged. If you're not willing to believe it, despite the evidence before you, there's nothing else I can say that will convince you. Xiaohua fell silent for a moment. Then a purple aura, burning like ethereal flames, began to rise from her body, rippling through the air with intense power. I am not his servant. Xiaohua roared, her voice echoing with defiance as she attempted to defy Yuan's authority. As a result, the authority immediately retaliated, inflicting immense pain upon her. Yet Xiaohua continued to resist and fight back, to the point where blood started flowing from her eyes, ears, and nose. This crazy little Feng Yuxiang was left utterly speechless. Chapter 2025 Fighting Xiaohua to Stop Fighting Against It. You'll only hurt yourself doing so, Yuan said after seeing Xiaohua attempting to resist his authority, almost subconsciously withdrawing it. Shut up. I don't know what you did to me, but I would never willingly be your servant, she shouted back. You must have forced me into becoming your servant without me noticing somehow? You'll kill yourself at this rate, Feng Yuxiang said, Lotus. You pra, ra, pla, ra, re, yeah. No, fang, So what? I'd rather die than become my mother's killer, this bastard servant. Feng Yuxiang looked at Yuan with a worried face. If Xiaohua continues to resist, she will definitely die. A master and servant pact was as sacred and powerful as a heavenly oath, so not even a God Ascension cultivator would be able to resist it. Ah, Xiaohua started screaming, not from pain, but from sheer determination. I forgot how stubborn you were in the past, Yuan sighed. It was clear that Xiaohua would keep resisting either until she broke free from his authority or perished in the attempt. With no other choice, Yuan withdrew his authority over her. The instant the restraints on her were released, Xiaohua's aura skyrocketed, and her cultivation soared straight into the 8th level of God Ascension. However, not even a heartbeat later, it entered the 9th level, reaching the peak of God Ascension. 9th level God Ascension? Don't tell me she's going to become a cultivation god next? Feng Yuxiang exclaimed. The moment she broke free, Xiaohua lunged forward, her arms snapping toward Yuan's neck in a seizing motion. The pressure radiating from Xiaohua's aura was so immense that Yuan couldn't even move a finger. In that instant, she seized his neck effortlessly, her grip tightening with terrifying strength. Then with her other hand, she thrust her sword forward, driving the blade straight into Yuan's heart. Yuan coughed up a mouthful of blood, but despite how grave it appeared, his life was not in danger, and the wound was only superficial. However, Xiaohua didn't stop there, and her aura surged violently, almost as if she was preparing for her ultimate technique. Young master? Seeing this, Feng Yuxiang immediately attempted to help, but Xiaohua's overbearing pressure was so immense that she couldn't even lift a finger, much less help. Today, Tian Xian, I'll avenge my mother by killing you. Xiaohua cried, her voice raw with grief and burning fury. Suddenly, a calm yet familiar voice echoed through the air. Stop. Xiaohua instinctively turned toward the sound, but before she could fully face it, she felt a firm hand press against her head, halting her movement. When did they get behind me? She cried inwardly. The voice continued. I won't let you hurt Brother Yuan anymore. Brother Yuan. Who the hell are you? Xiaohua demanded as she turned fully toward the voice. To her astonishment, she was met with the sight of a young girl who shared her facial features, so much so that it felt as though she were staring into a mirror. That's? Feng Yuxiang swallowed hard after seeing the individual standing behind Xiaohua, as she was the original owner of Xiaohua's previous vessel. A mere mortal, what do you think you can achieve? Xiaohua sneered after realizing the young girl's inferior cultivation. Although our souls may have separated, I still have your memories, said the young girl. Then, without warning, she activated a memory transfer technique, one she had learned from Xiaohua's own memories. In the next instant, a torrent of memories surged into Xiaohua's mind, the very memories she had once lost, from the moment she forgave Tian Xian in the primordial era to when she first met Yuan in the lower heaven. Millions of years of memories overwhelmed Xiaohua. Xiaohua released her grip on the sword and collapsed to her knees, her expression blank and unfocused, almost as if she'd become a soulless body. However, in reality, the memories she had just regained spanned millions of years, and it would take time for her mind to fully comprehend them. While Xiaohua was in such a state, the young girl shifted her focus to Yuan. Brother Yuan, are you okay? She approached him with a worried face. Even though Yuan knew the person before him was no longer the Xiaohua he once knew, a wave of nostalgia washed over him, as if she had never left his side at all. I'm fine, Yuan said, as he forcefully yanked Xiaohua's sword from his body. Is she okay? What did you do to her? I only returned to her memories, she calmly replied. It might take some time for her to snap out of it, but she'll be fine. After a moment of silence, Yuan asked, You're the original owner of that body, right? What is your name? The young girl opened her mouth, but she froze for a moment before responding. I don't have a name. By the time my consciousness had formed, I was already known as Xiao Hua. What about your parents? Surely they gave you a name, Feng Yuxiang said. The young girl shook her head softly and said, I don't have any parents. To be precise, I wasn't born through ordinary means between two beings. From what I know, I came into existence without a physical body and wandered this world as a formless being until Xiaohua's soul merged with mine. Only then did my body begin to take form. What, in thee, Feng Yuxiang was left speechless by such an odd story. A natural birth, like natural treasures and spirits? Are you even human? She couldn't help but ask. The young girl looked at her hands, seemingly pondering Feng Yuxiang's question. Does it even matter? Yuan suddenly said. He approached the young girl and patted her head like he used to before, asking, If you don't have a name, you can just give yourself one. The young girl stared him in the eyes and calmly said, Brother Yuan, I want you to give me a name. Chapter 22-26, Ling Yue. Me naming you? Yuan's eyes widened slightly at the young girl's request. The young girl nodded in confirmation. Yuan fell silent for a good moment before speaking again. In that case, how does Ling Yue sound? A weird light flickered within Yuan's eyes as he spoke the name. Ling Yue, the young girl mumbled. Do you want a different name? Yuan asked after seeing her reaction. No, she hastily responded. Ling Yue is good. It's a pleasure to meet you, Ling Yue. Ling Yue nodded with a bright smile on her face. Ugh, a grunt suddenly resounded, causing Yuan and the others to look at Zhao Hua, who was starting to wake up from her daze. A few more moments later, Zhao Hua no longer had a blank look on her face, and she started looking around with a somewhat confused expression. Xiao Hua, Yuan called softly. She turned to face him but remained silent. Then her expression began to contort with sorrow, and moments later, tears streamed down her face as she broke into a heart-wrenching cry. Wah! I'm so sorry! She started apologizing. What are you apologizing for? Yuan said with a smile. If this is about what happened just now, it's not your fault. Your memories were messed up after all. That doesn't change the fact that I pointed my blade at you. I even seriously tried to kill you. If she hadn't stopped me in time, I would have likely killed you, Xiao Hua said as she looked at Ling Yue. Kill me, Yuan chuckled. You should know me well enough to know that I won't die to something like that. Regardless of what you say, I deserve to be punished. Please punish me, brother Yu. Master Tian, Xiao Hua said, I won't complain, even if you decide to kill me. What would I gain from killing you? Yuan shook his head. As for punishing you, he pondered for a moment before speaking. All right, I have decided your punishment. You are forbidden from calling me Master Tian. That's Xiao Hua wore a dumbfounded look on her face. What? Don't tell me you're not going to accept the punishment. But what else am I supposed to call you? She asked. That's something for you to decide. You can continue to call me Brother Yuan. But now that you have regained all of your memories, I understand that it might be difficult for you. So I'll let you decide. Xiao Hua fell silent for a good minute before responding. Master Yu rejected. Yuan instantly interrupted her from finishing. I won't accept anything that starts with Master or Lord or anything similar, he continued. Xiao Hua sighed and said, In that case, I'll just call you Yuan. Yuan nodded. Now then, we've wasted enough time here. Let's go out and help the Asura clan with the intruders. We'll continue this afterward. Okay. They quickly left the Asura clan's world and appeared outside shortly after. However, by the time they arrived, Zhao Changming and the others had already cleaned up half of the intruders. My lord, Zhao Changming, who was still guarding the portal, greeted him the moment they appeared. Sorry it took so long. Something came up, Yuan said, his eyes pointing at Xiao Hua and Ling Yu. They're already awake? Zhao Changming was surprised by how quickly they woke up, as he had anticipated it would take several days, if not weeks. I'll explain everything later. What happened here? Yuan asked, though the answer was already clear to him. The ground was strewn with mangled corpses and soaked in blood, a sight eerily reminiscent of the primordial era when he himself had painted countless battlefields in crimson as Tian Xian. Xiao Kangming turned toward Zhao Meilin and the others, who were still fighting off the intruders, and said calmly, "We gave them a chance to turn back and leave, but as you can see, they chose otherwise." Without a word, Yuan suddenly approached the battlefield. "All of you stop. Read full story at Novel FearNet." His calm voice rippled across the battlefield, imbued with quiet authority, and in an instant all movement came to a halt. "If you came here for the spirit tree, you're too late, as it no longer exists, so you can either leave now with your life or die a pointless death." "The spirit tree no longer exists. You're lying," one of them shouted. Yuan merely shrugged. "Go see for yourself if you don't believe me. Even if I were lying, it changes nothing. You still won't get the spirit tree, and trying will only get you killed." The cultivators gritted their teeth in frustration, yet none could refute Yuan's words, with most of their comrades already defeated. Continuing the battle was meaningless. Still, none bothered to flee, since they knew that even if they turned their backs now, the Asura clan would hunt them down without mercy. Yuan could see their concerns and said, "If you leave now, I promise you that we won't chase after you later. We'll even pretend none of this happened." Yuan was willing to show them mercy, for he found little fault in their actions. Deprived of spiritual energy and driven by desperation, these cultivators had turned their blades against the Asura clan, who had long monopolized the spirit tree, something that would solve their problem, even if only temporarily. Moreover, these cultivators had no clue about the origin of the spirit tree, or that the Asura clan had grown it. In their eyes, the Asura clan was doing something the first celestial emperor had done, and if Yuan had been in their shoes, he would have likely done the same. How? How do we know that you won't go back on your word? One of the cultivators suddenly questioned, his face full of skepticism. Yuan shrugged. "You will have to take my word for it, or would you rather continue this meaningless battle and die for certain? The choice is up to you." When no one moved after a full minute, Yuan spoke again, this time to the Asura clan. "If any of them remain by the time I finish counting to 3, kill them all." "As you wish, master." Zhao Meilin was the first to acknowledge Yuan's command, showing the cultivators that Yuan truly held some authority over the Asura clan, chapter 2227, as a friend. "Did I hear that right? The Crimson Empress just called that man her master?" The cultivators gasped in shock, their eyes wide with disbelief. 1. Yuan suddenly started counting down. "Fuck. Are we really going to leave? What about those who had perished before us?" Some cultivators hesitated to leave. To them, retreating now felt like a betrayal, an insult to the countless comrades who had already fallen. If they turned their backs, it would be as though their companions' sacrifices had been for nothing. 2, Yuan continued to count. "Stay here if you want, but I'm out of here," one shouted. "If you'd rather waste your life like the others, be my guest." Many cultivators didn't hesitate to them. The dead mattered little compared to their own survival, and they refused to be counted among those who'd already fallen. In the blink of an eye, the majority of the remaining cultivators fled. 3, however, a few indecisive ones remained even after Yuan finished his counting. Without waiting for another breath, Zhao Meilin suddenly charged at those who stayed behind. "Ah!" Seeing this, these cultivators immediately made up their minds and started running away. Yet Zhao Meilin didn't care and chased after them. "Why are you chasing us? We're leaving," one of them cried out in despair. "I was ordered to kill anyone still here after 3. Zhao Meilin replied coldly, her voice devoid of mercy. "As far as I'm concerned, running now won't save you." Without hesitation, she continued her relentless slaughter, killing everyone who stayed after Yuan counted to 3. Once the area was quiet again, Yuan said, "Let's return." Xiao Kangming nodded, and the Asura clan followed him back into their world. "This, you padders, ye datal matter mil novelire.net. Sometime later, Yuan and the Asura clan gathered in a room to talk about Xiao Hua's situation and the Asura clan's future. The moment they sat down, Zhao Tangming shifted his gaze toward Xiao Hua and spoke. Even though it's normal for cultivators who have changed vessels to regain their cultivation quickly, you have recovered your cultivation a little too quickly. Did something happen? Xiao Hua's body trembled at Zhao Tangming's words, but not out of fear that he would discover what had happened. Merely recalling the moment she had attacked Yuan was enough to send a shiver through her. I don't know. It just happened, she calmly replied. Xiao Tangming turned to look at Yuan to see if he knew anything, but he also shook his head. In that case, what about your memories? How much did it regress? Xiao Tangming continued to question Xiao Hua. That's... Yao Hua hesitated to tell the truth this time. After all, if Xiao Tangming learned that she'd tried to kill Yuan regardless of her situation, he'd definitely be enraged. Of course, she wasn't afraid of him and preferred not to deal with him. Don't worry, she's regained all of her memories already, Yuan suddenly answered, and it was all because of her. Xiao Tangming followed Yuan's gaze to Ling Yue, who was quietly sitting beside him. My name is Ling Yue, she introduced herself. What? Xiao Changming's eyes widened with bewilderment after hearing her name. It was a reaction that puzzled Xiao Hua and the others in the room. After all, it was a secret that Yuan had revealed only to him. I gave her that name, Yuan explained. Xiao Changming fell silent for a moment before muttering, Is that so? Like Xiao Hua, Ling Yue's cultivation had risen since her awakening, though not as dramatically. She had only managed to reach the peak of the divine ancestor realm. That said, it wasn't unnatural. After all, Xiao Hua had reached the peak of God ascension in her past lives, while Ling Yue was just someone who'd received her memories. Soon, they moved the topic to the spirit tree. What about the spirit tree? Xiao Tangming asked. It entered my dantian, Yuan replied. Without the spirit tree, this world will collapse soon, Xiao Tangming remarked. In the primordial realm, only the Asura clan had the luxury of having their own world because it required an immense amount of spiritual energy to maintain one, something they could only achieve with the spirit tree. Seeing the guilty look on Yuan's face, Zhao Changming smiled and said, Well, it doesn't really matter since we won't be staying in the primordial realm for much longer. Does that mean you plan to leave the primordial realm? Yuan asked, even though he already knew the answer. That's right now that you have returned and I have fulfilled my mission. There's no longer any reason for us to stay in here. I see. What will you be doing once you are outside? Xiao Kangming pondered for a moment before asking, The Shadow Army, do they still exist? He nodded. Yes, and they're more active than ever. In that case, I'll stay with them and work towards recovering my cultivation. Only then will I be able to serve you properly again. Yuan smiled and said, Kangming, you have already served me long enough. Now that you have a wife again, you should focus on your family. That's unacceptable. I swore to be your sword until I draw my last breath. He quickly refused. However, Yuan shook his head and said, Don't take this the wrong way, but a lot of time has passed since then, and I already have a reliable sword by my side. You have done enough for me. Xiao Kangming fell silent again. After several minutes of silence, Yuan spoke, with that being said. I will likely still need your help from time to time, and when that time comes, I hope you will be willing to assist me as a friend. As a friend? Huh? A profound smile appeared on Xiao Changming's face. If this is what you truly want, then I have no reason to decline. Just call me Yuan from now on. All right, Yuan, thanks. Xiao Meilin stared at her father with wide eyes, utterly surprised that he had agreed to something like this so easily. What about me? She suddenly asked. Chapter 20-28, A Broken Treasure. What about me? Xiao Meilin suddenly asked. Yuan looked at her and replied with a question, What about you? I never even accepted you as my servant in the first place. No way! How can you say that to me now? That's too cruel, Master Tian. Are you really going to throw me away after using me for so long? Xiao Meilin exclaimed. Yuan showed a stiff smile and said, "Don't make it sound so weird. You're not a toy also. While you're not my servant, you're still my disciple. Do you intend on staying as a disciple for the rest of your life?" "Of course," Xiao Meilin answered without any hesitation. Yuan rubbed his eyes and sighed. "In that case, I have failed as your teacher and don't qualify to be one anymore." "You're acting pathetic, elder sister," said Xiaohua. "You should stop bothering Yuan." "That's easy for you to say since you're always following him around. I've been wondering for a long time now, but why did you get to go with him while I'm stuck here? And did you just call him Yuan? What happened to Master Tian? Did you really regain all of your memories? Or did you hit your head somewhere after awakening? Blame your own incompetence for not being chosen," Xiaohua said with a calm sneer. "I was chosen because I'm not only more talented and powerful than you, but more importantly, I'm not annoying like you. You little bitch, are you looking for a fight with me now?" Xiao Meilin's eyebrows twitched non-stop at Xiaohua's provocation. "Stop it, both of you," Yuan sighed. Xiao Meilin gritted her teeth and fell silent, but it was only for a brief moment. "You didn't answer my other question. Why are you suddenly calling him by his name? That's disrespectful, and you should know that." "That's none of your business," Xiaohua said, refusing to answer. Yuan then said, "I told her to stop calling me Master Tian. I'm sure I asked you to do the same when we first met." "So not only is she annoying, but she's also disobedient. Why am I not surprised?" Xiaohua chuckled. Xiao Meilin trembled in anger, and her aura started to surge violently. However, before she could even say another word, Xiao Chengming hammered her head with his fist, instantly wiping away her killing intent. "Your inability to control your temper is exactly why I never allowed you to follow Yuan," he said calmly. "Rather than be helpful, you'd only cause more trouble for him." Xiao Meilin fell silent again. "Don't be so down," Li Zhenwu finally spoke up. "You can always temper your control, and now that we'll be leaving the primordial realm, you'll have plenty of chances to." "You, quait, mat, gray, net, you, nak, yeah, net, you, net, Ray? Mort? Row. 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 New. With Xiao Kangming nodded. Yes, since most of the first generation are long dead. Why do you ask? Don't tell me you want to. Yuan smiled faintly. I wonder, would it be all right to open the primordial realm and let those who wish to leave do so? He had been pondering this ever since his encounter with Wu Qi, and that thought had only deepened after witnessing the cultivators' desperation. Xiao Kangming responded seriously. Honestly, I have thought about this more than just a few times. While there are many who wish to leave this world, and we have the power to release them, the problem is what comes after. If the current celestial emperor wanted to release us, he would have done so long ago, Xiao Changming said with a faint bitterness in his tone. While it's technically possible to leave through the Supreme Heaven's legacy, that so-called path is nothing but false hope, a cruel game that dangles freedom before the desperate after all my time in the primordial realm. I can count on one hand those who've ever succeeded in fulfilling the legacy. So, what you're saying is, we have to deal with the Celestial Emperor before we can release these people. I figured it would be like this, Yuan sighed. After all, even if the people get to leave, as long as they have the exile's branding on them, they won't truly be free. Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly and asked, This branding, what is it? It can't be a curse since it didn't appear when I used the sacred chalice of purification on you. Xiao Changming shook his head. I'm not sure either. It's a curse. What? Everyone in the room turned to Mu Shuelian, who'd just spoken. Lord Shiva said it's a curse. Can you elaborate? If it's a curse, why didn't my sacred chalice of purification activate? It's a treasure that can remove all curses. Shiva took control of Mu Shuelian's body and beckoned Yuan. Show me that little treasure of yours. Yuan didn't question her and handed her the sacred chalice of purification. Shiva took a quick glance at it before tossing it back to Yuan as if it were trash. The curse was created with the power of an eternal. A broken toy like that won't have any effect on it. Wait a second. Yuan rubbed his eyes in a stressful manner and continued. So you're telling me that not only is an eternal involved, but my sacred chalice of purification is a broken treasure, even though it functions properly and is powerful enough to remove most curses in existence. An eternal also created that treasure, and I happen to know its creator. Shiva revealed what? An eternal creating treasures. Yuan's eyes widened at this information. I didn't even think an eternal would show such interest. Shiva snickered. Not even gods are impervious to boredom, you know. And while that thing might be a treasure to you, it's nothing but a toy in our eyes. In fact, most of the treasures that appear naturally in this world are our creation. Chapter 2229, Forbidden Void Treasures. The Eternals are the creators of natural treasures. You've got to be kidding me, Yuan mumbled in a bewildered voice after learning this information from Shiva. Most people believe treasures are creations of the heavens, Shiva continued, her tone laced with mockery. But that's merely a delusion born from their ignorance of the unknown. Honestly, it's quite hilarious, Xiao Changming then said, but I have witnessed treasures materializing out of thin air with my very eyes. It usually happens in places where spiritual energy is abundant. Sorry to disappoint you, but that is also not natural. As for how it's achieved, it's a little complicated, so I'll save myself the trouble. Yuan then spoke. I couldn't care less how it's done. I want to know why. I highly doubt the Eternals are putting these treasures in our world for fun. Shiva smiled faintly and said, Then you underestimate how unbearably bored we become. We Eternals have existed since the dawn of time. You can't even begin to fathom how many ages we've spent drifting alone in the void. That said, I'm sure not every Eternal is doing it just for fun. Some probably don't want to waste their effort or just want their toys to be used. What about cursed treasures? Li Zhenwu asked. Those that possess great power but also carry dangerous backlashes. Anything that you humans didn't create was created by Eternals. Yuan then spoke with a mocking tone. In that case, we humans aren't far behind, and some of us might even surpass the Eternals in craftsmanship, considering how some of those natural treasures are complete trash. Ha 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 ha! Shiva suddenly burst out laughing. Moments later, she stopped and said, "How naive most of the treasures were made trash on purpose." "Why would they do something like that?" Xiao Meilin asked. "Due to the absolute power, our influence in this world is heavily restricted, and that includes our creations. If we created treasures too powerful, they wouldn't be able to enter this world." "Wait a second." Yuan suddenly spoke up. "Are you referring to the Forbidden Void treasures?" "What are Forbidden Void treasures?" Xiao Chen asked with a puzzled look on his face. "There existed treasures born from the starry sky, found drifting within the endless void," Yuan explained. "However, no matter the method, these treasures could never be brought back to the nine heavens, as though some unseen force forbade their entry into our world. That is why they came to be known as Forbidden Void treasures." "I have never heard of such a thing until today," Xiao Changming remarked, and he considered himself very knowledgeable. "Me neither," Xiao Meilin said. "Discover more novels at Novelfire." Well, they weren't discovered until after the Immortal Monarchs' era came to an end," he said. "That explains it. Anyway, you said my sacred chalice of purification is broken. How can I fix it?" "Fix it?" "You don't have that capability," Shiva said while shaking her head. "I may not look like it, but I know a thing or two about crafting treasures," said Yuan. "So what? Even if you're the best craftsman in the world, you won't compare to an eternal. So it's a matter of technique, at least you get it. Yuan may have been the god of creation in the past with godlike abilities, but there's a vast difference between godlike and truly godly skills. Not only that, but Eternals likely had their own crafting methods, so regardless of Yuan's abilities, he wouldn't be able to fix the treasures created by them until he acquired their techniques." "Then do you have any suggestions?" Yuan then asked. "Who knows? Maybe I do. Maybe I don't. I'll consider it if you ask me nicely." Yuan sighed. "If I had known you would be this useless, I wouldn't have agreed to letting you follow me." Shiva frowned at his obvious provocation and said, "What an odd way of asking nicely." Yuan silently shrugged. After a moment of silence, Shiva spoke. "If you do something for me, I'll not only tell you how to restore that toy, but also teach you how we Eternals craft treasures." "What are you scheming?" Yuan narrowed his eyes at her, clearly suspicious of whatever she was thinking. "I know of an Eternal who was sealed in this world even before me, and he's very proficient when it comes to crafting. If you help me unseal him, I'll persuade him to teach you his techniques." "Interesting," said Yuan. "Can you tell me your relationship with this Eternal?" "He's something akin to a mentor to me. Do you know where he's being sealed? I do." Yuan pondered her offer for a moment before responding, "Let me speak with him first. If I deem him to be a threat, I won't unseal him. Fine by me." Shiva nodded. "I'll give you more details after we leave this place." "Sure." Yuan returned to talking about the primordial realm with the Asura clan shortly after. "At the end of the day, as long as the Celestial Emperor is our enemy and the people's exile brand remains, they won't be able to live peacefully even if they leave this world, so we can only wait until after we deal with these two issues," said Yuan. Xiao Changming nodded. "There are also a lot of other things that we must consider." Sometime later, Yuan asked them, "Now then, are you all ready to leave the primordial realm?" "I have been waiting for this moment since I was born," said Zhao Chen, his face full of excitement. Yuan nodded. "Then we'll leave in a week. If you need more time to pack your things, let me know." Yuan retrieved a handful of spatial rings and placed them on the table. "You can use these, thank you." Once everyone in the Asura clan had a spatial ring, they left to pack their belongings. However, Zhao Hua stayed behind since she had nothing to pack. "Yuan, I have a question." Xiao Hua suddenly spoke to him. "What is it?" "Once we leave the primordial realm, will I still be able to follow you? Or am I going to have to stay with my family?" she asked. Chapter 22:30, Leaving the Primordial Realm. Yuan smiled and responded to Xiao Hua's question. "That will depend on you. If you want to continue following me, I have no reason to refuse. Of course, if you wish to stay with your family, I will also respect that decision." "I wish to continue following you." She immediately gave her answer. He nodded with a warm smile. What about me? Ling Yue suddenly asked. Of course, the same goes for you. What do you want to do? I wouldn't know what else to do if I were not by your side, Brother Yuan. If it's possible, I would like to continue to follow you, then it's decided. Moments later, Ling Yue entered Yuan's dantian to rest. Wow, it's so different in here, Ling Yue remarked after seeing the spirit tree. What do you think about it? Yuan asked. It's very comfortable in here because of the abundance of spiritual energy, and with the spirit tree constantly producing more spiritual energy, I can feel my cultivation improving just by being in here. That's good to hear. Inside his dantian, Ling Yue faced Feng Yushang and Lan Yingying. Ling Yu offered them a sheepish smile as she spoke. I know I'm not Xiaohua, but I still have all her memories. Still, I don't expect you to treat me the same as before. So, what are you talking about? Feng Yuxiang cut her off. Xiaohua or not, you were essentially the same person back then. Our bond with her is the same bond we share with you. Lan Yingying nodded with a gentle smile. She's right, so don't suddenly start acting like we're strangers. Thank you, Senior Feng. Senior Lang Yue spoke with teary eyes. That's not right. You can call me Senior Sister or Feng Feng. You can also call me Sister Yingying, unsenior sister, Sister Yingying. Feng Yusheng then spoke. Also, I didn't get to say this back then, but thank you for stopping Xiaohua. Please don't mention it. I only did what I had to in order to protect Brother Yuan. Still, you did what I couldn't. Feng Yuxiang sighed in a dejected manner. However, she didn't stay dispirited for long, and she said, with that being said, I am still the young master's #1 servant. Of course. Ling Yue nodded with a bright smile. Meanwhile, Xiaohua said to Yuan, since we have some time, there's something I would like to do with you. What is it? Xiaohua retrieved a book from her spatial ring and said, I would like to read you this book. A nostalgic smile immediately appeared on Yuan's face when he saw the book in Xiaohua's grasp. The latest episodes are on the novelefear.net. Sure. The two of them left the Asura clan's residence and took a seat under a nearby tree. Sometime later, Xiaohua opened the book and began reading its contents. Yuan listened with closed eyes. Your comprehension of Heaven's secret art has improved significantly. Heaven's secret art's mastery level has increased to level 5. Your comprehension of Heaven's secret art has improved significantly. Heaven's secret art's mastery level has increased to level 6. A few hours later, Heaven's secret art's mastery level has reached max level. I know you already fully comprehended this technique in the past, but I still wanted to do this, Xiaohua said as she closed the book. Since Heaven's secret arts had been with the Asura clan even before they were sealed inside the primordial realm, Tian Xian had already learned and mastered it in the past. Yuan smiled and said, it may not be the strongest technique out there, but it is definitely one of the most unique. Yuan, before we leave the primordial realm, there is something I must tell you, Xiaohua suddenly said. Although my soul has accepted this vessel and there are no compatibility issues, my soul right now is greatly weakened, so even though I am at the peak of God Ascension, I won't be able to use my full power until I recover enough. Don't worry, I won't ask you to fight. That's not, I know, Yuan interrupted. But even if you were in perfect condition and had the cultivation of a cultivation god, I still wouldn't want you to fight for me. At the end of the day, you're a precious comrade. And unless absolutely necessary or we're just messing around, I don't want to put you in harm's way. Also, we have another expert at the peak of God Ascension with us, so if I ever encounter a threat I cannot handle, we still have her, Xiaohua quietly nodded. Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye, a week had passed. The moment had finally come for Yuan and the Asura clan to depart from the primordial realm. Are you all ready to leave? Yuan asked them. We are, said Xiao Kangming. Without another word, Yuan retrieved the ancient key and used it to open a portal before them that would lead them straight outside. Then I'll see you on the outside, Yuan said before entering the portal, disappearing from the primordial realm. Mu Shuilian and Zhao Hua went afterward, followed by Zhao Chen, Li Zhenwu, the servants, and finally Zhao Changming. Once outside, Yuan expected to find Dong Ye and the others waiting for him. However, the sight that greeted him was entirely different. Dong Ye and the rest of the Shadow Army were still there, but they were locked in fierce battle against a vast force of cultivators. Over 1,000 soldiers clad in armor filled the battlefield, each one emanating the aura of the God Ascension realm. Those guys, Heaven's Mandate. Did the Celestial Emperor anticipate my plan to enter the primordial realm and set up an ambush here? Yuan pondered with a deep frown on his face. My liege, thank the Lord, you're out just in time. Dong Ye's voice suddenly resounded through voice transmission. What's the situation? Yuan asked. As you can see, the Celestial Emperor's dogs are here. A surprise inspection took place a few days ago, and although we were prepared for it, something unforeseen occurred, messing everything up. Long story short, the Celestial Emperor is now aware of the primordial realm being opened. Chapter 2231, Outside the Primordial Realm. What is going on out here? Why are we suddenly in the middle of a battlefield? Xiao Chen questioned with a dumbfounded look on his face after coming out of the primordial realm, the excitement on his face quickly replaced by confusion. Their armor, they're the Celestial Emperor's lapdogs, the Heaven's Mandate. Xiao Meilin's eyes flickered with killing intent after seeing their familiar-looking armor. Despite being in the primordial realm for tens of millions of years, she'd never forget the Heaven's Mandate. My Lord Yuan, what is the situation? Xiao Changming asked him. According to Dong Ye, there was a surprise inspection which alerted the Celestial Emperor of our activity. He gave a brief explanation. Xiao Kangming narrowed his eyes. So, can we kill them all? Yuan pondered for a moment before responding. Go help out Dong Ye and the Shadow Army, but be prepared to leave at any moment. Since the Celestial Emperor is aware of our activity, there's a good chance more reinforcements will appear. We're not prepared to fight the Celestial Emperor and his army right now. Without another word, Xiao Changming and the Asura clan joined the battle. Of course, Heaven's Mandate had been aware of their presence since they left the primordial realm. Exiles have escaped the primordial realm. Kill them all. The commander of the army shouted and commanded over 100 God Ascension experts to deal with them. Soon the Asura clan and Heaven's Mandate clashed. I never thought I would get to fight with the Celestial Emperor's dogs so soon after leaving the primordial realm. How refreshing. Xiao Meilin laughed excitedly as her cultivation exploded outward. Be careful. That exile is at the peak of God Ascension. What? How did she reach such a level within the primordial realm? I thought there was no spiritual energy in that world. The soldiers were both bewildered and puzzled by the Asura clan's unexpected prowess. Most of the soldiers there were between the 3rd level and the 5th level of God Ascension, so they were all powerless before Xiao Meilin. God of War's astral arts. Despite his lack of cultivation, Xiao Changming was still an unstoppable force on the battlefield with his martial techniques. Yuan didn't immediately join the battle and continued speaking with Dong Ye. My liege, we're only staying here to fight because you were still inside the primordial realm. Now that you're out, we should leave this place as soon as possible, said Dong Ye. Not only will there be more reinforcements later, but there's a small chance the Celestial Emperor might even show up himself. I agree. I'll distract them while you withdraw with the Asura clan. You will? How are you going to do that? I have my ways. However, there are a little too many people for me to do it right now, so I'll start once we cut down their number some more. I understand. Time to warm up. Yuan mumbled to himself when he noticed several presences approaching him. When he turned to look at them, he could see 4 soldiers soaring directly at him, and the strongest amongst them was only at the 3rd level of God Ascension. Let me deal with them for you, Xiao Hua suddenly said. No, you should save your energy and focus on recovering your soul. I can handle them without breaking a sweat. Okay. Without another word, Xiao Hua entered his Dantian. Shortly after, the soldiers arrived and surrounded Yuan. You're not in exile. Who the hell are you? The soldiers questioned him when they couldn't sense the aura of an exile on him. I'm the one who went inside the primordial realm and freed those people. Yuan calmly responded. A mere immortal like you. You have no idea what you got yourself into. Let's not kill him and capture him instead. We'll need to question him, one of them said. Good idea, Yuan chuckled and said, I'd like to see you try. The very next moment, Yuan retrieved number 1 under heaven and struck first, attacking the strongest amongst them. Despite his sudden attack, none of the soldiers seemed concerned. If anything, they sneered in disdain. How foolish, the soldier targeted by Yuan muttered as he raised his weapon to block the incoming attack. However, Yuan's aura suddenly exploded right before he struck. Not only did he activate True Dragon Awakening, but he also enhanced his prowess with chaotic essence. Before they left the primordial realm, and while the Asura clan prepared for their departure, Yuan approached Xiao Changming to see if he had any chaos coins for him to consume. As the most influential and powerful family in the primordial realm, the Asura clan was naturally unfathomably rich. Although most of their wealth was made up of the Inferno alchemists' currency, they also held currencies from the other 2 powerhouses. In the end, Yuan was able to acquire around 100 billion small chaos coins, 10 times the amount he attained from selling the Spirit Stone. And with that amount of chaos coins, he was able to advance his second cultivation to the peak of chaotic immortal, which was equivalent to a true immortal who was on the verge of entering God Ascension realm. However, for Yuan, in terms of prowess, he could easily rival a 3rd-level God Ascension cultivator if he used it to enhance his strength. What the hell is that ridiculous power? Is he really a true immortal? The soldiers cried out in shock after witnessing his overwhelming prowess. As for the soldier targeted by Yuan, he had died in a single strike because he had underestimated Yuan and failed to block his attack. After killing the first soldier, Yuan immediately turned his attention to the next closest one. Seeing this, the other 2 soldiers quickly reacted and went to help their comrade. However, not only were they unable to save their comrade, but they also died at the hands of Yuan in a single strike. You wand rower the where gaffed will right rat. Rat. hell are these bastards? Udroguron-novelfire.net. The commander of the soldiers trembled in anger after witnessing how badly they were losing to the Asura clan. Wait a second. That technique he just used? Why does it look so familiar? Although he didn't realize it at first, the commander slowly started to recognize the Asura clan's martial techniques, their overwhelming killing intent. Those techniques don't tell me the Asura clan? Even though he had never fought against the Asura clan or seen their techniques before, the commander was almost certain of their identity. Due to the Asura clan's immense reputation and their pivotal role in the heavenly war of immortals and gods, their legacy remained ingrained in history and taught to every new soldier of Heaven's mandate, even to this very day. Even so, the commander could hardly believe it. The Asura clan, second only to the evil god in their contributions in their war against the first celestial emperor, has escaped the primordial realm? No, I cannot allow them to leave alive, the commander barked, clenching his fists. He immediately retrieved a communication jade slip and requested more reinforcements even though he'd already done so earlier. Send the reinforcements immediately, and send as much as you can. The Asura clan has escaped from the primordial realm. The receiver of the commander's transmission jolted in shock upon hearing the message. The Asura clan? I must notify His Majesty. The Celestial Emperor immediately, he exclaimed, his voice trembling with disbelief. Without even the slightest delay, the man rushed to find the Celestial Emperor. However, he was stopped at the Celestial Palace's front gate. What do you want now, Messenger Huang? The guard asked the messenger. This is about the primordial realm. I must speak with the Celestial Emperor as soon as possible. It's an emergency. The primordial realm? The reinforcements are already on their way. No, you don't understand. I just received news from Commander Li that some exiles have just escaped from the primordial realm, and they're the Asura clan. Asura clan? The name didn't immediately register in the guard's mind. The Asura clan. However, once he realized the severity of the issue, he immediately opened the gates to allow the messenger through. Sometime later, the messenger reached the Celestial Emperor's room, but he was stopped at the door again. Messenger Huang, what are you doing here? The messenger immediately repeated what he said to the guard outside. The Asura clan, you say? The guard quickly retrieved a communication jade slip and relayed the information to the other holder. Moments later, the door behind him started to open, and a servant walked out. His Majesty, the Celestial Emperor, is already aware of the Asura clan's situation. You may return. Without waiting for a response, the servant closed the doors. The Celestial Emperor is already aware. Did he predict this would happen? The messenger mumbled to himself before leaving the Celestial Palace shortly after. Meanwhile, the Celestial Emperor stood calmly before a massive device, staring at the slumbering figures shown within it. The Asura clan, the ones who fought beside the evil god Tian Xian against the first Celestial Emperor, huh? He muttered with a faint smirk. They may have been formidable once, but now they're nothing more than ancient relics, hardly worth mentioning. Suddenly his entire body stiffened as he caught sight of movement from one of the slumbering figures. What began as faint, almost imperceptible twitches soon grew more pronounced, rippling through the stillness of the void. A wide smile appeared on the Celestial Emperor's face as he rejoiced. At last. Meanwhile, outside the primordial realm, Yuan and the Asura clan had cut down more than half of Heaven's Mandate's forces. All right, all of you, prepare to leave. Yuan sent a voice transmission to everyone from the Asura clan and the Shadow Army. Yuan suddenly stopped moving and started gathering his spiritual energy, even using his eternal essence. A few moments later, his aura exploded forward, enveloping everyone there. What is he trying to do? The soldiers of Heaven's Mandate were instantly alerted and turned their attention to him. Heaven's seventh art, Heaven's grand snare. In the next instant, hundreds of golden chains materialized around Yuan and lashed outward toward the soldiers, as if seeking to ensnare them. The soldiers hastily launched counterattacks, but to their horror, their spiritual energy scattered the moment it touched the chains, rendering their techniques utterly useless. As for those who struck using their weapons, not even mythic-grade treasures were able to put a mark on the chains, almost as if they were indestructible. Some tried to flee, but the golden chains moved at the speed of light, outspeeding them with ease. "What the fuck is this?" The soldiers cried out loud as the golden chains wrapped around their bodies, restricting their movements while sealing their cultivation at the same time. "Now, leave," Yuan commanded them to leave, once he had captured nearly every single soldier there. Without hesitation, Dong Ye retrieved a treasure and immediately created an escape portal. "Over here!" Seeing the portal, the Shadow Army and the Asura clan quickly rushed toward it. While the others escaped, Yuan focused on maintaining the technique. Since he had to use the technique on hundreds of God Ascension cultivators, his spiritual energy was being drained at a drastic rate. Yet with his powerful cultivation speed, Yuan was able to restore his spiritual energy just fast enough to barely keep up with the demand. "My liege, everyone has safely escaped." Hearing Dong Ye's words, Yuan deactivated the technique and rushed toward the portal as he was unable to move while using the technique. However, right before reaching the portal, Yuan suddenly stopped moving. "My liege, what are you waiting for?" "The portal will close soon," Dong Ye exclaimed. Yuan gritted his teeth and responded with voice transmission. "Something is restricting my movements." "What?" Before Yuan could say another word, an unfathomable presence suddenly descended, enveloping the space around him with an otherworldly presence. This presence, an eternal. Yuan's brows furrowed into a frown after recognizing the identity of the presence. Chapter 2233, The Appearance of an Eternal. Dong Yi, listen to me carefully. Close the portal immediately. "An eternal is coming," Yuan said. "What? What about you, my liege?" "I cannot move my body right now, let alone leave. It's clear that this eternal has business with me, and that it won't let me leave." "Are you telling me to leave you to face a god alone? Impossible. I will return to assist you." Dong Ye exclaimed. "Dong Ye, are you disobeying me right now?" Yuan spoke in a cold tone. "That's not. Even if you are here with me, what can you achieve? Can you fight a god?" Yuan interrupted in a cold tone. "No, I cannot." As much as he hated to admit it, Dong Ye stood no chance against an eternal and would only be a burden. A calm smile appeared on Yuan's face as he spoke. "Have you forgotten who I am? This isn't my first time dealing with them. I'll return once I deal with the eternal." "I understand. Please be safe, my liege." The portal started closing the very next moment, leaving Yuan stranded in the primordial chaos with the remaining soldiers of Heaven's Mandate and an incoming eternal. "Where is Yuan? Why did you close the portal?" Xiao Tangming demanded after seeing the portal close, his expression darkening into a deep frown as killing intent flickered in his sharp gaze. "I swear, if you'd betrayed us," Xiao Meilin and the others subconsciously reached for their weapons. "Don't you dare mock me, even if it's you. I won't stand for such slander," Dong Ye snapped back, his voice full of anger. "Then why the hell did you? It was his liege who commanded me to close the portal. He was halted by a god before he could enter the portal. What? An eternal appeared." Xiao Tangming's eyes widened with disbelief. "Then we need to go back and do what? We may be powerful, but we're nothing but ants in the eyes of these gods. Only his liege has the power to face them." Xiao Kangming fell silent at Dong Ye's words, the tone of defeat in his voice leaving no room for response. "We'd only get in his way if we were there," Dong Ye continued with a deep sigh. "The only thing we can do now is wait for his return, the source of this content's in Vapor.net. "Hey, let me go," a voice suddenly resounded. "What?" Dong Ye turned to look at Mu Xuelian, who'd just spoken. "Did you not hear what I just... You may not be able to handle an eternal, but don't compare me to you mortals." "What the hell are you? There is an eternal residing in her body," said Xiao Kangming. "What?" Dong Ye jumped in a startled manner. After snapping out of his daze, Dong Ye spoke. In that case, you might be able to help my liege. Help? You're misunderstanding something. I won't be helping him. Dong Ye frowned at her words, but before he could say anything, Mu Zhuelian, now controlled by Shiva, continued. I'm an observer, his observer, so I want to witness his fight with the Eternal. That brat dared to claim that he could put Eternals to sleep, so I want to witness it myself. With that being said, if he begs me to save his life, I might consider it. Dong Yi gritted his teeth when he saw Shiva's sadistic expression. What are you waiting for? Hurry up. I don't want to miss the show, she urged him. Fuck, whatever. Dong Yi activated the treasure, creating a portal that led back to Yuan. Without hesitation, Shiva walked into the portal. Are you sure that was a wise move? Xiao Meilin asked. What else was I supposed to do? If she's really a god, nobody here can defy her. Also, despite what she said, I doubt she'd really let him die. Xiao Kangming nodded in agreement. I don't know why she's following Yuan, but I'm sure she won't let him die so easily. Meanwhile, Yuan let out a deep sigh as the portal closed before him. He then shifted his gaze toward the soldiers who had taken the opportunity to surround him while his movements were restricted. I don't know why you didn't escape while you had the chance, but you won't be going anywhere now, said the commander. Yuan smiled and calmly responded, If you guys value your lives, you should leave while you still can. Still acting tough? I don't know what martial technique you used to restrict our movements, but I bet it exhausted your cultivation, and I doubt you will be able to do it again. Maybe it's the reason why you cannot move right now. Suddenly, the space before Yuan twisted. What the f? Yuan's eyes widened as the portal that had closed moments ago reopened, and a beautiful figure emerged from it. Mu Zhuelian? No, Shiva. Yuan mumbled after seeing her beautiful face. What are you doing coming back here? Did you really think I would give up the opportunity to watch you clash against an Eternal? Shiva responded as the portal closed behind her. Don't worry, I won't ruin your fun, as I am only here as a spectator. How twisted. Yuan sighed. I don't know what the hell is going on, but, the commander began, only to be cut off as an unfathomable pressure suddenly descended, crushing the air around him. What the hell is this pressure? He exclaimed in a terrified voice, his body trembling uncontrollably. It wasn't just him. Every single soldier there was shaking like they were naked in a blizzard. Speaking of the devil, Shiva mumbled with a calm smile on her face. You had your chance to leave, but alas, Yuan sighed. Run! Get away from here as soon as possible. The commander roared, shouting at his soldiers, yet none of the soldiers left as they were all frozen in fear. As the pressure intensified, agonized screams resounded. One by one, the soldiers' bodies began to swell like overfilled balloons until they burst apart in a gruesome chain reaction, starting with those of the weakest cultivation, Chapter 2, Close 3-4, fighting an Eternal. What the hell is going on? What did you do to us? The commander shouted at Yuan for answers, thinking he was responsible for the situation. Yuan calmly replied, I didn't do anything. Hell, I was even nice enough to give you a warning. Unfortunately, you didn't heed it, and as a result, you'll die in mere seconds. All of the soldiers perished under the pressure. The commander, stronger than the rest, managed to endure the crushing pressure for a few moments longer before unleashing a final agonized scream. Moments later, his body erupted violently, and his soul was instantly annihilated, leaving him no chance to escape. Though the soldiers of Heaven's mandate had been annihilated, Yuan couldn't afford to relax as the true threat was rapidly approaching. Moments later, a massive, ethereal figure materialized before Yuan. It had no physical form. Its ghostly body wavered like mist, yet it radiated an overwhelming aura of malice that seemed to corrode the very space around it. Of course, it was no ordinary aura, as it was formed from eternal essence, and the sheer concentration of it far surpassed anything Yuan had attained thus far. Did you really have to kill them? Aren't they on your side? Yuan asked. What nonsense are you uttering? The Eternal responded in a coarse voice. Yuan raised an eyebrow at the unexpected response. The Celestial Emperor didn't send you here? The Celestial Emperor? The Eternal repeated in a puzzled voice. Have you already forgotten about this mighty Saruk, even though you were acting so boldly not too long ago? You're Saruk, Yuan exclaimed after realizing the Eternal's identity. I didn't think you'd come after me so soon. Are you really that impatient? Ha ha ha. Are you trembling in fear? Do you regret opposing this mighty Saruk? After a moment of silence, Yuan responded. To be honest, I was expecting more from an Eternal ranked in the top 20. Saruk sneered. Because we're still within the Absolute Power's influence, I can appear only in this ethereal form, and while in this form I can wield barely 10% of my true strength, Saruk had originally planned to wait until Yuan left the Absolute Power's domain before making good on his threat. But impatience won out, so he arrived ahead of time at the cost of this inconvenience. Even though I'm only wielding 10% of my true prowess, it's more than enough to handle an ant like you, Saruk mocked. We'll see about that, Yuan replied. Read full story at novelire.net. There's nothing to see when you can't even break out of such a simple restraint. Saruk pointed at Yuan, who still had his movements restricted by an invisible force. You mean this little trick? Yuan's body suddenly erupted with eternal essence, and within moments, he shattered the restraints binding him. Saruk didn't react to Yuan breaking free. Instead, his gaze shifted toward Shiva, who hovered calmly nearby, watching the scene unfold with the detached air of a spectator. How unexpected, Saruk said, his tone laced with disdain. I hadn't anticipated encountering another Eternal here, much less someone like you, Shiva. When did you regain your freedom? Very recently, she calmly replied. Who helped you break out of the seal? Don't tell me this ant? Shiva didn't respond. Ha ha ha! Saruk burst into laughter, his voice echoing like thunder. Truly hilarious. To think an Eternal would stoop so low as to seek help from a mere mortal. Did you lose your pride during the time you were sealed? I can't wait for Ishrak to hear about this. I wonder how he'll react to you breaking out of his seal. Maybe he'll track you down to seal you again. Shiva's eyes flickered with immense killing intent after hearing the name Ishrak. How dare you speak his name in my presence? I'd love to make you pay for it, but I'll let him deal with you today, she growled. You will make this mighty Saruk pay? Saruk started laughing again. With what? That mortal body? You won't be able to defeat this mighty Saruk even if you had your eternal body, much less in that trash. Enraged by Saruk's provocation, Shiva erupted in a burst of eternal essence. The surge was overwhelming, and Mushwelian, merely a mortal, could not withstand it and started bleeding from her orifices. Hey, what the hell are you doing? Have you forgotten that body doesn't belong to you, or are you trying to kill Mushwelian? Yuan frowned after seeing this. If you're just going to observe, do it properly. Upon hearing Yuan's words, Shiva quickly calmed down and immediately withdrew her eternal essence before starting to heal Mushwelian's injuries. To think you'd shut Shiva up with so little effort. Not bad, mortal, Saruk remarked with a mocking smile. Are you done talking? If so, let's get this over with. I have other business to attend to. Do you really want to die so quickly? Unfortunately for you, this mighty Saruk has no plan on letting you die a swift death. It'll be a slow and painful one without another word. Yuan activated True Dragon Awakening and retrieved number 1 under heaven before making the first move. However, wary of Saruk and his unknown power, Yuan kept his distance and attacked using Supreme Sword Aura. Saruk didn't move an inch, showing no intent to defend himself. When the Supreme Sword Aura struck him, it fractured instantly, shattering like glass against an invisible wall, leaving Saruk completely unharmed. Using a mortal's power on this mighty Saruk, you're nothing but talk. Saruk shook his head in disappointment, while a thick layer of eternal essence shrouded his entire form. Of course, having fought Eternals before, Yuan was well aware that only eternal essence would be able to harm them. However, he'd never fought an Eternal in their ethereal form, so he had to do some tests. Don't just stand there now. Come, Keep entertaining this mighty Saruk. This mighty Saruk won't attack until you realize that you are powerless before this mighty Saruk and fall into despair. Saruk beckoned Yuan, his voice full of arrogance. Chapter 2235, Mighty Saruk. Despite Saruk's provocation, Yuan remained calm. Since you insist, I'll continue doing just that, he said, as he continued trying different things from martial techniques to spiritual techniques such as true primordial fire, heaven's final judgment, and even heaven's bane. Yet they were all useless against Saruk and his eternal essence. It was akin to trying to destroy a brick wall with nothing but raw eggs. You're much more foolish than I thought. Mortal ant Saruk laughed loudly at Yuan's futile efforts. Even Shiva couldn't help but feel agitated at Yuan. What the hell are you doing? Are you seriously messing around before an eternal? She yelled at him using voice transmission. Does it really look like I am messing around? He asked. Yes, it does. Now start fighting him seriously, or you'll really die. Yuan sighed inwardly the next moment. His aura shifted drastically and eternal essence surged from his entire being. Saruk narrows his eyes at the sight. A mortal being using eternal essence. What an odd and unpleasant sight, he muttered with a disgusted expression. To Saruk, watching Yuan wield something meant only for eternals was like seeing a pig pretend to be human, not just distasteful but downright offensive. However, amidst his disdain, Saruk was also astonished by Yuan's achievement. He couldn't fathom how a mere mortal could have learned to wield eternal essence, as it wasn't something that could be taught after all. Most humans would perish just from learning about the existence of eternals, much less learning and wielding their powers. He looked at Shiva and wondered if she had anything to do with it. The real fight will start now, Yuan said. Then, without warning, he launched his strike. An overwhelming amount of eternal essence engulfed number one under heaven, and it unleashed a devastating sword light that was made entirely out of eternal essence. Yet, despite knowing that Yuan's strike contained eternal essence and could potentially harm him, Saruk didn't lift even a finger, almost as if he still had no intention of blocking it. In the next instant, Yuan's eternal essence collided head-on with Saruk. Unlike his earlier techniques, it didn't shatter upon impact, but even so, it failed to break through Saruk's barrier. Not only did it fail to break through, but it was even absorbed by Saruk. So this is what eternal essence created by a mortal ant tastes like. As expected, it's weak and disgusting. Saruk narrowed his eyes at Yuan and spoke in a disinterested tone. This won't do. At this rate, forget about entertaining this mighty Saruk. You'll bore this mighty Saruk to death instead. The very next moment, the eternal essence around Saruk became violent, and his aura surged then. He vanished into the void. Yuan became as still as a statue as he searched for Saruk, but his divine sense picked up nothing. Suddenly, a numbing sensation crawled up Yuan's back, and he instinctively turned only to find Saruk standing behind him like a ghost, silent and menacing. That was the power of the void. Yuan realized what Saruk just did because of his own understanding of the power of the void. This mighty Saruk could have killed you 100 times just now, said Saruk. Then why didn't you? Because this mighty Saruk has yet to torture you for daring to bare your fangs at a god. However, it will start now. Saruk raised a single finger, forming a small spear-like projectile with eternal essence before shooting it at Yuan. Saruk's ethereal form was vast, large enough to rival a small planet. So to Yuan, it truly felt as though he were an ant fighting against a giant. When Yuan attempted to block Saruk's strike, he was immediately sent flying deeper into the void. The difference is immense, and he can only use 10% of his full prowess, Yuan cried inwardly. Even without witnessing Saruk's full power, Yuan could tell that this eternal far surpassed any he had faced before. The realization struck him hard that the Eternals he'd once battled were nothing more than small fry in comparison. Do you understand the difference between us now, you insignificant mortal ant? Saruk mocked after seeing how far Yuan was thrown. I'll admit that you're a little stronger than I anticipated. However, it doesn't change anything as I still defeat you in the end, he said. Follow current novels unveil. Fear. This natant. Nat. Saruk remained silent, but the displeasure in his gaze was as clear as day. A mere lowly mortal ant, he suddenly mumbled. I've had enough of your disrespect and arrogance. Without another word, Saruk charged at Yuan, his entire figure engulfed with overwhelming eternal essence. Yuan didn't falter and charged straight into close-quarters combat with Saruk. Despite channeling every ounce of eternal essence he could muster, he was steadily forced back, overwhelmed by Saruk's sheer might. Shiva watched in silence. Even though Yuan was losing to Saruk, she was still impressed by his prowess, as this was her first time witnessing a human fighting an eternal. No mortal has ever defied an eternal before, much less directly clash with them. She sighed inwardly. Yuan had been fighting Saruk for an entire week at this point. It's a pity that he offended someone like Saruk. Although our journey was short, it was enjoyable while it lasted. Without a word or warning, Shiva's figure suddenly vanished into the void. In her eyes, Yuan's defeat was inevitable, and once he fell to Saruk, she would be targeted next. Lord Shiva, are we really going to leave him alone? Mushwelian asked as they traversed using the power of the void. His fate is already sealed. There is no point staying around and waiting for our turn. It's unfortunate, but there's nothing I can do against another eternal while I am in this condition. What are we going to do now? Mushwelian then asked. We'll focus on strengthening your body and cultivation. Once prepared, we'll start looking for my body. I understand. Even if Mushwelian didn't want to abandon Yuan, she had no choice in the matter. After all, Shiva could take control over her body at any time, and her orders were absolute. Shortly after Shiva left, Saruk noticed their disappearance. Ha. Shiva, that coward. Saruk roared with laughter to think she'd flee while her savior lies on the brink of death. His mocking voice echoed as he gazed at Yuan, bloodied, exhausted, and barely conscious. Despite having powerful regeneration, Saruk's eternal essence seemed to have a property that weakened his regenerative abilities. Young master, this monster is too powerful. I'll distract him while you escape. Feng Yuxiang's voice suddenly responded in Yuan's head. I will also help. Xiao Hua then said. Lan Yingying and Lingyue also wanted to help, but they were too weak to even do anything. No, I won't allow that. Yuan immediately refused. Then what do you suggest? You'll die to that monster at this rate, Feng Yuxiang exclaimed. Just a little more. Yuan responded. What? Just give me a little more time. Without explaining further, Yuan temporarily sealed off his connection with them so their voices could no longer reach him. Young master? Feng Yuxiang was left baffled and confused. Let's just believe in him, Lan Yingying suddenly said. I don't think Yuan has any plans on dying here, especially not when we're still with him. I want to believe him, but I have never seen the young master in such a bad state before. Feng Yuxiang sighed. What's wrong, mortal ant? You've gotten quiet. Saruk spoke. Yuan smiled and said, I don't blame Shiva for leaving. There was nothing she could do anyway. That's because she's weak. If she were even half as strong as this mighty Saruk, she wouldn't have been sealed away in the first place. Anyway, this mighty Saruk has wasted enough time on you. You should feel honored to have fought and died at the hands of this mighty Saruk. What's the rush? I'm not done yet, Yuan said as his weakened aura suddenly started surging again. However, Saruk didn't even bat an eye and said, no, you're done. The only reason you even lasted this long is because this mighty Saruk allowed you. Moreover, your eternal essence is too weak to do anything. If it's too weak, then I just need to strengthen it. Strengthen it? Ha ha ha. You're just a mortal ant. Regardless of how you learned how to wield eternal essence, only true eternals can strengthen it. Saruk was unaware of Yuan having a true eternal constitution, hence why he doesn't believe Yuan could strengthen his eternal essence. Without a word, Yuan suddenly closed his eyes and took a deep breath. It took some time, but I can finally feel the essence of the void, he mumbled a second later. What? Saruk's eyes widened at his words. Eternal constitution, incomplete, activated. Eternal constitution, incomplete, has begun refining. A moment later, Yuan started absorbing the essence of the void. Yi? Are you actually trying to absorb essence from the void? Saruk exclaimed, his voice filled with shock for some reason. Chapter 2236, Essence of the Void. When Yuan started attempting to refine the essence of the void, Saruk didn't intervene. In fact, he even watched with intrigue, almost as if he wanted to see the results. A mortal ant wants to absorb the essence of the void. How laughable. Even Eternals with a true eternal constitution struggle to do so. Saruk sneered inwardly. Unlike spiritual energy or any other known force, the void was something entirely different. Though it enveloped most of the universe, even experts with millions of years of cultivation failed to comprehend it, let alone wield it. For that reason, the power of the void was regarded as the most difficult and enigmatic path in all of cultivation. This held true even for the Eternals, gods of the universe. While their boundless experience and knowledge allowed them to comprehend the power of the void, refining its essence was an entirely different matter altogether. Because of this, Saruk had been utterly shocked when Yuan claimed he could sense the essence of the void. And when Yuan went so far as to attempt refining it, Saruk couldn't resist witnessing it himself to see whether a mere mortal could truly accomplish the impossible despite already knowing the answer. There's no way he'll be able to refine the essence of the void. The moment he attempts to do so and fails, his entire being will be erased from existence. Although this means this mighty Saruk won't be able to kill the mortal ant with his own hands, it'll be worth it. Saruk laughed inwardly. While Saruk watched with excitement and anticipation of his gruesome death, Yuan calmly refined the essence of the void. He's not doing anything to stop me, so he must be confident that I would fail or that I still wouldn't be able to defeat him, Yuan thought to himself after seeing Saruk's reaction. Whatever his reason is, this is beneficial for me, so there's no reason for me to stop here. Without a moment's hesitation, Yuan started refining the essence of the void that existed in every direction, and even further than he could perceive. You have refined the essence of your understanding of the power of the void has increased significantly. Yuan was pleasantly surprised to see his comprehension of the power of the void improve in such a manner. He could also feel an immense amount of energy flowing into him, causing his eternal essence to strengthen quickly. However, as expected, this isn't going to be easy. Yuan gritted his teeth as an overwhelming pressure built within him, threatening to tear his body apart. The essence of the void was so fierce and volatile that it reminded him of the time he had attempted to refine the dragon god's blood essence. But unlike that time when dragon goddess Yeyu assisted him, nobody could help him refine the essence of the void at this moment. Suddenly, Yuan's body started swelling up like a balloon with blood seeping from his pores. It was a weird and gruesome sight that would make even experts churn. That's what you get for trying to refine the essence of the void when you're a mere mortal. Saruk burst out laughing. However, moments later, Yuan's body started returning to normal, and his aura grew fiercer. Saruk's laughter halted immediately, his eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "Impossible," he exclaimed. "Your understanding of the power of the void has increased significantly. Your understanding of the power of the void has reached the next realm. You have acquired advanced void understanding. Your understanding of the power of the void has increased significantly. Your void manipulation has reached a new level. Even as he achieved advanced void understanding, Yuan continued to improve his void mastery just as fast as before." A few minutes later, once Saruk confirmed that Yuan could, in fact, refine the essence of the void, he clenched his fists and mumbled to himself, "This cannot happen. This mighty Saruk will not permit a mere mortal to touch something that is too good for him." To Saruk, watching Yuan refine the essence of the void, something only Eternals were meant to touch, was like seeing a pig sit at the same dinner table and eating the same food as humans. The sight didn't just anger and disgust him. It drove his fury to the very brink. Without hesitation, Saruk immediately went for a killing blow while Yuan was still immersed in his refinement. However, just as Saruk reached him, Yuan suddenly opened his eyes, which flickered with newfound strength. Although he'd only spent a few minutes refining the essence of the void, it had not only fully recovered his strength, but also improved it drastically. That was just how powerful the essence of the void was. Without the slightest hesitation in his movements, Yuan went to block Saruk, who struck with all of his strength in a fit of anger. This is... Even though Saruk was in an ethereal form, Yuan could tell that he was trembling in anger after having his attack blocked. "This is your second time. Underestimating a human," said Yuan. "It will also be your second time being defeated by one." Yuan's aura erupted, his eternal essence surging outward like a tidal wave that crashed violently against Saruk. For original chapters, go to ovalfire.net. If you think you can defeat this mighty Saruk just because you refine some essence of the void, you're greatly mistaken. This mighty Saruk has been refining the essence of the void for countless years. Had you fought with your full strength, I wouldn't have stood a chance. But that's not the case, is it? Yuan remarked with a calm smile. Even as they clashed, Yuan continued refining the essence of the void, his eternal essence steadily evolving, growing denser, sharper, and gradually surpassing Saruk's own. Eventually, Yuan's eternal essence grew strong enough to overwhelm Saruk, allowing him to reach Saruk's ethereal form. "Arg!" Saruk roared in agony as Yuan's strike pierced him, inflicting pain upon him for the first time. To think a mere mortal ant would inflict pain upon this mighty Saruk. This mighty Saruk will never forget this humiliation.